Lord, give courage, wisdom, and foresight. Provide for the needs of all our people and to fulfill our obligations in the community of nations. Give grace to your servant, O Lord. And finally, teach our people to rely on your strength, to accept their responsibilities to their fellow citizens. They may elect leaders that make wise decisions for the well-being of our society. We may serve you faithfully in our generation and honor your holy name. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes for the meeting held on Monday, March 31st, 2025, Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025, and Thursday, April 24th, 2025, to be confirmed. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be confirmed.
Questions that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed. Minutes for the meeting held on Tuesday, July 1st, 2025, to be deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
Questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Firearms Amendment Bill 2025, as well as the Tourism Levy Amendment Bill 2025.
Question that the aforementioned bills be read a first time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Question that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Sir, before government business, withdrawal of bills.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are two orders on the order paper, Order 1 and Order 2. One relates to the Barbados Metrology Bill, which would have been laid in 2022, as well as the Copyright Bill 2023. Both ministers who will be leading these debates are now in the Senate, and I therefore beg to move the withdrawal of these two bills, which will at a later stage be replaced in the Senate chamber.
Second. Question is that order number 1 and order number 2 be withdrawn. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Orders number 1 and number 2 are withdrawn.
Order number 12, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, to move the passing of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 5 of the Land Acquisition Act, Chapter 228, the compulsory acquisition by the state of the parcels of land situate at Windsor and Lower Grays Junction in the parishes of St. George and Christchurch in this island, and more particularly described in the schedules for the public purpose of the construction of a roundabout.
Honourable member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to introduce this resolution to acquire 7 parcels of land totaling 20,254.5 square meters, roughly around 5 acres of land at this junction of the Windsor and Lower Graves in the parish of St. George and Christchurch for the purpose of a roundabout. But let me, I rise in a solemn mood because those of you who know me know that I'm a cricketer and I lost twice this weekend. I lost at Kensington and West Indies lost, but Mr. Speaker, they were devastated. But Mr. Speaker, you told me this morning that you had a conversation with Darren Sammy, and I think he's asking me to join the squad. I can join the squad, Mr. Speaker, but let me get on with this business of the day first, and then we can discuss me joining the squad. Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, this site at Windsor Brighton is located, they have here 1.5 kilometers east of Border Hall Police Station, heading east on Highway 5. And Mr. Speaker, on Thursday, I received a call from my colleague, member for St. Michael Southeast, who informed me that an accident occurred at that junction on Friday. That was after we had a pretty meaningful discussion about this acquisition of land that started back in 2010 by the last administration. And indeed, I often say when there's something in the interest of public safety, we should have no political divide, nor no quarrels on matters of public safety and health, and indeed protecting our citizens. This junction, over the years, Mr. Speaker, we have had a number of accidents, incidents, and also fatalities, road fatalities, as a result of vehicular accident at this junction. And when you approach this junction, Mr. Speaker, coming from the Border Hall Police Station, as you get to the junction, you have on your left, heading north to Brighton Plantation, and on your right, you're heading to Lower Graves. That will take you to the airport. And it's a very dangerous junction, and I know both successive governments have tried to acquire this land, and this is 15 years we've been trying to bring some respectability to this problem. And in 2022, officers from the Barbados Police Service and Fire Service and personnel from the ambulance service responded to a mass casualty situation in which we had some 25 persons sustain injuries around 7:15 p.m. And this junction, Mr. Speaker, is dear to me as well because I had a friend. I had to respond to an accident there, a very close friend of mine, and who lives in the Lower Graves area as well one night. So over the years, we've seen a number of major accidents. And they're not just accidents, because when you have an accident, Mr. Speaker, an accident where you see personnel, not pedestrians, persons in their motor vehicles going on their merry way, and someone comes out from a junction that is blind. We call it a blind junction coming south from Lower Graves, and they have a T-bone turn to the right, or you can make a left turn, or you can go straight. And that's where the majority of the accidents occur. Persons approaching the forecross there at Windsor Brighton, coming from the Lower Graves section, which is a blind corner, or a blind section of the intersection. And when you have these accidents, Mr. Speaker, it impacts the healthcare sector, because we spend a lot of money in healthcare, and we have to do that because it's a right as well. But it also impacts the quality of family life, because when you have the head of the household, or even any member child who indeed travels in a vehicle, and you come to any junction, not just Windsor Brighton Junction, but across Barbados, and you have a vehicular accident, not even at a junction, and you're hospitalized, it impacts families. So this resolution, though it may seem simple, is indeed critical to allow the smooth flow of traffic, to enhance productivity as well, because when we have vehicular accidents, they're human beings. They're not animals, and even animals as well we have to protect. But they're human beings sometimes who are going to work, and indeed they don't get to their place of work. Some don't even get back home if it is a road fatality. So the importance of road safety to our sustainability must not be underscored. And the safety of our roads, Mr. Speaker, is of paramount importance to this government, given its impact on public health. I mentioned economic productivity and the overall well-being of residents and entire communities, because when we have accidents and we have persons from communities, from churches, you know, persons, your neighbor is also impacted. So this impacts the entire society, accidents. And there have been an increasing number of vehicles on our road. I'm speaking to my senior minister, member for Christchurch West. He estimates that we have 140,000 cars on our roads. Vehicles, on our roads. And this has raised concerns regarding an increase on collision rates, because the more vehicles you have on our roads, the more collision, the risk, because the risk is the likelihood of something occurring by the severity. So the risk increases as you have the increasing number of vehicles on our road. And the majority, though, of these accidents that we're speaking of tend to occur at busy intersections, such as the one that I mentioned in the Windsor Junction and Lower Graves, and also the Turnpike Junction. And I can speak to some other areas in St. George. I'm not being parochial here, but when you journey north from the Turnpike and you're heading to St. Joseph, there's the Groves Junction. That junction leads to St. Joseph and also St. John through the district called Sweet Vale. And we had a number of accidents there. Mr. Speaker, I regret that we're going to have to come back to Parliament, because we are actively working on the resolution to approve the land acquisition to have a second roundabout, and that will be the one at Groves. And I know the member for St. Michael Southeast, we spoke about this only this morning, because that one should reach Parliament as soon as possible. I hate to use those terms, cabinet approving and then it reaching Parliament, but that's the truth. We have severe challenges with accidents in those areas that I mentioned, the Turnpike Junction, that is traveling east from Buckley Factory, the Windsor Brighton roundabout that I'm speaking about this morning, the resolution pertains to that, and also the Groves roundabout. All three happen to be in St. George, but I'm not being parochial, but I call it as I see it. We have other areas across the country that I know traffic management plans by the Ministry of Transport and Works are in train to address some of the vehicular challenges that we get as a result of the number of cars on the road, over 140. So, Mr. Speaker, we're also seeing an increasing expansion in housing developments as well across this country, and increasing vehicular congestion. And the need for safer and more efficient road network as necessitated innovative traffic management solutions. And Mr. Speaker, there is a section of this country that I frequent, traveling north, and I know that the former minister member for Christchurch West, it was his view to signalize that intersection. And signalize means placing lights at that intersection. And indeed, I am not the traffic engineer for MTW, Ministry of Transport and Works, but they do their studies to determine what is the most appropriate strategy, whether roundabout, whether signalizing, but indeed to allow smoother traffic and to reduce the number of accidents in this country. And it can be found, though, that in general, traditional signalized intersection can also contribute to traffic delays and higher accident rates. And while I will not go into my preference of a roundabout versus signalizing, there are times when you have to signalize, and there are times when you have to place roundabouts. But the integration of traffic roundabouts offer proven cost-effective and sustainable alternative that aligns with national infrastructure, transport, and housing goals. And why I say that? The cost of a roundabout, the long-term maintenance cost, there's no real long-term maintenance cost other than really beautifying the roundabout, which adds to the aesthetics of the community. But we know when you sectionalize a roundabout, an intersection, there's a cost of electricity and there's a long-term maintenance cost. And I'm not getting into the debate, like I said, but I'm just giving you the options and reasons why the Ministry of Transport and Works at times would say to you, we will place a roundabout at this section, or at another time they will say, we will signalize this intersection, and that's their purview, and I'm not getting into that. That's not my forte at this stage. It used to be, because part of my studies coming out of St. Augustine looked at traffic management. And indeed, I'm no rookie to the area, but I vow not to get into that debate today. Only to say that I am happy that this resolution has reached this far to allow the Windsor Brighton and the residents of the area to see an improvement, especially the Lower Graves area. I know the residents of Lower Graves in the constituency that I represent would be happy to hear this morning that we are indeed approving the acquisition of close to 5 acres of land to commence the work on this roundabout. But, Mr. Speaker, there are some benefits of roundabouts that I will get into briefly. And across jurisdictions globally, roundabouts have been embraced as modern traffic solutions due to their safety and performance advantages. Like I said earlier, their value extends beyond transport efficiency and helping to influence residential planning, I said, public safety, economic growth, and indeed the urban aesthetics. And we know very well as new housing developments emerge, there's a need for resilient and scalable traffic infrastructure. That becomes imperative, as the guys will say, that becomes axiomatic. That's the word you use, Mr. Speaker, axiomatic. Now, roundabouts are not merely traffic tools. I said earlier, they are strategic infrastructure assets that support a broader development goal. And while, Mr. Speaker, there are no statistics that I have on the injuries or fatalities specifically at roundabouts in this country, I don't have those statistics. But what I can say, there's some benchmark internationally that suggests the improvements in roundabout design and driver compliance could reduce overall collision by about 37%, can reduce injury crashes by up to 75%, and can reduce fatal crashes by around 90%. compared to signalized intersection, and that is global benchmarks. And I touched the member for Christchurch West because I know where his preference is. But Mr. Speaker, there is greater need for traffic management in this country. This government has been trying its best to improve traffic management, to improve traffic flow, to enhance safety, and better for pedestrians and cyclists. We have seen a number of accidents increase as it relates to cyclists in this country. There's also environmental benefits for having roundabouts, and I can just mention it briefly. Fewer stops and starts, Mr. Speaker, for a vehicle mean that there's less idling and there's less use of fuel, and also emissions. So the less you stop, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, the less fuel you use, the less emissions. So this contributes, Mr. Speaker, to better air quality and lowering the carbon footprint in urban areas. I also mentioned, Mr. Speaker, the lowering of operation and maintenance costs, as well as community benefits in terms of beautification. And the central island can be landscaped to improve the visual appearance of the area when you have roundabouts. Presently, there's a small roundabout at French's in St. George, the area that I represent. And I applaud the lady who worked at NCC, who's now retired. She beautifies that area single-handedly with plants. And indeed, when you're traveling east from Brighton Plantation, heading to St. Philip along Roland Hills, you have to get to French's. And as you look to your left, just above Melverton Christian Mission Church, you will see a beautiful roundabout, very small roundabout, but it is decorated with plants and the flora. The member for Christchurch West Central, I think he has been there with me, and he too was impressed, because you know how he feels about flora and fauna, not only himself, but us as well. But Mr. Speaker, let me move on to a greater challenge we have in terms of improving traffic management in this country, in our city. And I travel north on mornings, Mr. Speaker. It takes me at least 1 hour when I leave around 7 a.m. It takes me at least 1 hour to travel from that section of St. James, Mr. Speaker, to Bridgetown. And it speaks to a greater need for traffic management, park and ride, for us to keep. Persons should be able to park their cars and indeed reduce the congestion on the road, emissions, better traffic management. This enables better traffic management. So the whole ferry system that we spoke about many, many years, Mr. Speaker, I know that the member for St. Michael South East is actively looking at ways to reduce the congestion of traffic on our roads. And it is one of the areas that was mentioned by Trieste. And those of you who know, when I go back to Trieste, that's years ago, and I read Trieste reports, and those reports speak to, and they're still active, reports, speak to the use of ferry system to allow better traffic management, to reduce the carbon footprint and the air quality on our roads. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I just heard the voice of the former Deputy Speaker, and I call her a member for St. Thomas. But, Mr. Speaker, when we speak about reducing the congestion on our roads, we have to indeed look at modern systems of parking and riding. As we travel north, and I'm saying north, not only from the north, but from the east. If you travel from St. Philip on mornings around 7 or 8 o'clock, you see the lines of traffic, and we say they are creeping. They travel at less than 15 miles per hour for over 1 hour to get from the destination in the eastern section to central Barbados. So there's a need for more park and ride systems in this country. And I know that this government, while I mentioned that, I must also say that this government has plans indeed, and you will see some of these plans being rolled out now. Within the next couple of weeks, we have Carrie Festa here, and I know we met the member for Christchurch West, the member for St. Michael's Southeast as well, who has the portfolio to address these challenges. We met and we looked at ways in which we can reduce or get persons to their destinations faster, and park and ride systems are indeed the most easy option, or the more easy option, to allow persons to indeed enjoy Carrie Festa as they ought to. Now, this debate, Mr. Speaker, I will wrap up shortly, but I'm hoping that persons will see the need for a greater roll-out plan for traffic management in this country. When we travel through Bridgetown, we see too many cars in the city. And if you travel internationally, you take a plane and you go in some modern cities, you see persons utilizing bicycles, you see persons utilizing more park and ride systems. And I think for us, in an effort to reduce the carbon footprint, and in our goal, our 2030 goal, to become carbon neutral, we indeed have to address the traffic management challenges with the increasing number of cars. As we build houses, you see more cars coming into our society. One thing we had we had some 80,000 cars, and we have nearly doubled within the past 10 years. And indeed, that will increase, because as you build houses, Mr. Speaker, families see the need to move from their place of abode to take their children to school, from their place of abode to get to work. And we have to come up quickly, Mr. Speaker, with a plan to address the traffic congestion on our roads, not only by signalizing intersection or by roundabouts, but a greater traffic management plan that I know the member for St. Michael's Southeast will speak to. But I will end off by thanking the member for St. Michael's Southeast, who worked with us to get this 15-year project, bring it to some respectability. Indeed, I understand that within a month or two, the work should start at Windsor-Brighton roundabout, and that will bring some ease to the residents who indeed fear for their lives as they travel along that section within a few months, right? Yes. Let me correct myself. The process of tendering, thank you, member for St. Michael's Southeast. We are now going through the process of tendering, and indeed that takes sometimes as long as 2 months. So we're hoping that after the tendering process, we can see some work commencing at that Windsor-Brighton roundabout. And of course, Groves as well, because we had expected to debate both of these, both Groves roundabout and the Windsor-Brighton roundabout, but unfortunately we only have the Windsor roundabout here. But I'd say to the residents of Sweet Vale and those persons heading to St. Joseph and those persons in the area of Groves, that soon to be will be a roundabout at that junction. So fret not thyself. This government is working to indeed improve traffic management in this country. I know there is a proposed car park, high-rise car park for the south of the island. I wouldn't go further to speak on that, because that is discussion, a preliminary discussion. I happened to be in a meeting where we looked at an area on the southern section of the country, and the member for Christchurch West, who's responsible for infrastructure, he too sat into that meeting. So there are plans by this government to improve traffic congestion, to improve the safety of our pedestrians, as well as persons who use our roads. And indeed, we are hoping that this year we can see some improvement in terms of more signalization, more roundabouts being employed, and I look forward to the day, Mr. Speaker, as I wrap up, to see a ferry system coming from the north of the island to address traffic congestion in the Spikestown area and in the whole town area. And I also look forward, Mr. Speaker, in the very near future, to see something similar in the southern section to indeed assist those persons coming from St. Philip and the Christchurch area to allow persons to reach to school early and improve productivity, because when persons get to their place of work early, that's an improvement in productivity. And indeed, I sympathize with some persons who have to take the public transport, because we have to compete. The public transport has to compete with the vehicular traffic, the cars traveling on the roads of this country. So a wider traffic management plan, the member for St. Michael Southeast will speak to that. But Mr. Speaker, as I end off, I support the introduction of the acquisition of land into this Parliament. 20,000 is 20,000 to be specific, 20,254.5 square meters, which is approximately 5 acres. The Attorney General that has certified the resolution as being in order for consideration by this Honourable House is therefore hereby proposed that this resolution do now pass. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable St. John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I fully support the acquisition of this land. I have some areas in St. John as well. But, Mr. Speaker, I rise today fairly angry, first as a father, second as a Minister of Youth, and also as the MP for St. John. Yeah, very angry, because I came here today to represent a young man. A young man, and I can't believe that the leader of the opposition is seriously thinking about running in St. John. I can't. Mr. Speaker, there are 4,264 eligible males in the constituency of St. John. And I'm going to ask my PA to pull this and put it on my social, because this story must be told. And I'm speaking directly to the leader of the opposition. Dear Mr. Thorne, I'm currently facing significant challenges in maintaining communication with my daughter.
Honourable member.
Yes. Sorry. I didn't mean to call the honourable leader of the opposition's name. I forget that you're not supposed to call names, so I will not.
Honourable member, please,
Yes.
please. I think you
Sorry?
you need to let the chair speak. Obviously, it's not proper procedure to call the name of the honourable member in that form, in that way. That is yes, sir. And I notice that you're opting to read, this is not permissible as it relates to the standing orders, because I see you're reading a letter or something, I don't remember, but you're not so permitted to do. It is against the standing orders to so do. Yes, abide by the requisite standing order. You're not allowed to so do, Honourable Member for St. John. Continue.
All right. Mr. Speaker, so you're saying that I should ask permission to call Adiko Calamore's name?
No, but that's not the. That is not in compliance with the standing order.
So noted. So noted.
So you
Mr. Speaker.
Hold on, sir. The standing order would permit you to summarize what has been said or whatever. But you cannot address it in that manner, honorable member. You cannot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This young man from the constituency of St. John reached out to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, asking him to use his influence so that he may be able to see his young daughter. Mr. Speaker, I know that the chamber, and like I said, I'm going to be brief on this, the chamber may be asking, how can the leader of the opposition influence a young lady to have the father of her child see that child? But the influence is deep because the leader of the opposition made the said young lady a candidate for the next election.
Honourable member, it is not. Honourable member, it's not oftentimes that I would have to interject. But what we are debating here, honourable member, speaks to a specific resolution relative to the acquisition of land as it relates to the construction of a roundabout. So that I believe that any debate from you ought to be centered around what the honourable member for St. George South has led off. I could understand that you might have issues, but there will come a time and place when you can address those issues. That is A, and B, if there is a resolution that might be dealing with something in relation to the youth, it is thereby permissible for you to raise it. But we are debating on the issue of an acquisition of a parcel of land to facilitate the construction of a roundabout. And therefore, I would wish that your speech be centered in that area rather than in another area, honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is a forecross at Messiah Street that the honourable member for St. George South is aware of that is fairly dangerous. And a lot of fathers use this roundabout to go see their children in the area. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that if not traffic lights, maybe a roundabout should be placed at Messiah Street, because coming from law school, more importantly, coming from Sergeant Street, where fathers live, I'm saying that this is an area that is necessary for us to have a roundabout in this location, because mothers live on the other side as well. And speaking as the honourable member would have mentioned, this is a serious matter, because in a response that said in another place that I'm a father too and I love children, I'm saying that this should be made safe for families, nuclear families, father, son, daughter to traverse. And this is one of the problem areas in St. John. In addition to that, Four Roads is also a problem in terms of if you're trying to exit the Four Cross at Four Roads, coming from Mount Tabor, it is problems. Another area that fathers traverse as well. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm in full support of this, and I'm sure that the honourable member, the honourable leader of the opposition, when he is supposedly canvassing in the constituency, will realize that Sergeant Street may be an unsafe area. There's no roundabout, but he would support having one at Messiah Street. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Member St. Philip West.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the brief opportunity here to give my support to this bill, to this resolution, which would acquire the lands so named in the resolution for the purpose of building a roundabout. And sir, those particular pieces of lands to be acquired are actually button-bound on the constituency of St. Philip West, which I have the opportunity to represent. And I could not let this bill go by without saying how much desired this roundabout is right there. I also wish to add, sir, that there is just up the road from where this roundabout is proposed to be built. There is an area where a little girl got knocked down last year, and she was hurt significantly. And I have to say that my constituency's office, we have been speaking with the member for St. Michael Southeast, who also has a responsibility for the Ministry of Transport and Works. And there is a crossing that is to be put near the bus stop where the little girl got knocked down. It is a thoroughfare, sir. And I believe that with this roundabout, we should not only think about the traffic flow at the roundabout, but we should think of the traffic flow going into the roundabout, where people make the street going straight up from Brayton, coming all the way down, a thoroughfare in a significant way. I believe that we need to put crossings, not just here, but generally where people are more likely to cross, usually near where bus stops are, that kind of a crossing and care for traffic management will ensure that persons are safer. And it also encourages motorists to yield, because when they can anticipate where that crossing is going to be, many of them will adjust their speeds. And so, sir, I give my support to this bill because of its contribution to the flow of traffic and traffic management that is much needed in the area. I believe that it will also reduce the number of accidents, it will save life and limb, and it will ensure that we have due care for the safety of the people of that area, including those of Hannies, Windsor, which button-bound the area where this will be. And with these few words, sir, I give my support to this resolution.
Honourable Member St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I too rise to support this acquisition by the Honourable Minister. As he would have introduced the resolution, he spoke to a number of, I think, months of running his ministry down and himself to get us to this point today. And ironically, on the last Thursday, we were finally able to get the acquisition before, the resolution before the cabinet. And Friday afternoon, I was on my way to get my hair cut in St. George, and I had the misfortune of having to turn around because of the very sad accident at Windsor Brighton. I don't want to say what my message to the Honourable Minister then said, but I was most grateful that at least we had taken the steps over the last few months to be able to get the resolution before Cabinet, and certainly that there were no casualties as a result of the accident. I do feel the misfortune, obviously, when accidents of this nature happen, particularly at junctions that have been long-standing and problematic across the country. And it is certainly not lost on myself or certainly the Cabinet or the other members of the ministry when we know that there are areas where there needs to be some adjustments or there needs to be some design work, but it feels sometimes that you haven't moved fast enough to be able to ensure that the designs are done or the tendering has been completed. So I do accept that from 2010 when this would have started, and I think the Honourable Ministers indicated, obviously it has straddled both administrations, so this is, again, not a debate of pointing fingers, but I think that this speaks to a process that really has taken far too long in bringing this issue to this place to be able to do the acquisition. When I became Minister, it was against a background where we'd been hearing a lot about the Windsor-Brighton roundabout being put in place. The member for St. Andrew and myself raised this in several meetings in relation to why the process had not been moved along. We then discovered that over the course of the previous years, there had been some disputes regarding the contract. There were some variations that were done to the roundabout, and perhaps what the minister didn't allude to was that the initial acquisition which had been started was for 4 parcels of land for this particular project, but we later realized that a larger portion of the land would actually be required in order to be able to scale up the design for that particular area. And in truth and in fact, a number of the lands that we have acquired, really nothing else can happen in those spaces. So our acquisition was to take into account the design, but also the fact that the entities that we are acquiring the lands from, that it would be better to take in the entire space, which would allow us to be able to do a proper design for that space. I think there's a recognition that because of the flow of traffic coming from the rural areas, that there have been concerns in terms of people being able to see properly at the various junctions. Oftentimes people don't know who should go first. They approach cautiously, but then they find themselves perhaps caught in blind spots because of vehicles approaching from either side. And of course, sometimes people panic in the process of being able to determine how to traverse the particular junction. So I'm glad that after the last year, certainly we've been able to resolve the issues. Unfortunately, the person who actually did the design work on the project has since died. And that, obviously, prior to his death, we were caught in a whole legal battle regarding the compensation for the services that were rendered. So it is unfortunate that it has taken this long, but I'm pleased today to know that we have seen the process through. And we've seen the process through because the issue of road safety is of concern, certainly to myself, it's of concern to the ministry, it's of concern to the wider government as well. There are a number of acquisitions. The Honourable Minister spoke of the issue of groves as well, which we had hoped to get here today. But we anticipate that groves will shortly be able to be brought by way of resolution as well for the acquisition of the lands. That will also involve the Sweetvale Road design as well, because we're not just going to be doing the groves area in terms of the roundabout, but it has also led us to improve the conditions of the road in and around the groves area. And that groves project, we estimate at this point, in addition to the roundabout and the improvements to the road, is probably going to be around about a $5 million in terms of the project. I state that, Mr. Speaker, because I think it is important for people to understand the process, but also understand that while the call is often made for the improvements, there are a few steps that have to be taken for us to get to this point, whether it is design, going out to tender, and of course, bill of quantities, being able to make sure that we know what these things are actually going to cost. The good news is that we have the designs for both the Windsor-Brighton roundabout. We also have the designs completed for the Groves roundabout as well. And once we have received the acquisition, actually we can go ahead in terms of actually doing the tender, but we've got the designs before the Chief Procurement Officer into the bonfire system with a view to being able to have a date schedule for us to be able to have that uploaded for contractors to be able to tender, to be able to construct both roundabouts and also the design for the actual road. So I stand here today certainly very pleased that we have started this process. We've been dusting off a number of long-standing matters in the Ministry of Transport and Works that have been raised by the public, it's been raised by the MPs, it's been raised at the Paris Speaks, it's been raised in social media, and we are paying attention to those concerns that have been raised. We may not be able to get to every single issue in the time frame that people would like, but I give the assurance that we have been working through a lot of these long-standing matters, certainly that I came to the ministry and I found, and trying to dust them off the shelves and make sure that we are able to do the necessary procurement, the necessary tendering in order to speed up the process. I can also say that on previous occasions I have made the request in this place and elsewhere for the engagement of a procurement officer to assist the ministry in speeding up the processes of tendering. And we have received that individual, and that is why we're able, over the last few months, to be able to accelerate the amount of tendering that is done by MTW, because we were deficient in moving things from design to actual tender stage. And of course, our methodology now is more to have supervision being done both internally and externally of a number of these projects to be able to see them through. Parliamentary Secretary and Honourable Member for St. Andrew will speak, I believe, to a wider project, which is one that is very near and dear to my heart, which is to see the transformation of the roundabouts across the country. I believe we have almost 150 roundabouts under our belt, and the intention is that these roundabouts, which have been placed over the years under a committee to be able to allocate to various corporate entities to market and promote their brands, that the time has now come for a partnership with ministry and private sector to be able to utilize them to not only spread the messages about the brand, but also to ensure that we are able to promote strong positive messages, to also be able to give the corporate, the creative sector an opportunity to display their visual arts as well in this space, and certainly to be able during the Easter, Christmas, and certainly any other independence and any other significant event, to be able to work with the corporate entities to brand those areas so that the country itself starts to take a different feel and shape in the spaces in and around our roundabouts. But we're not just working on roundabouts. We are mindful that the area going up by St. David's is a major concern as well, and I know that that is the junction by St. David's is another major priority. And once we're able to get these two projects off of the ground, the intention is to move quickly to be able to get the designs completed so that we can move to improve the solutions at that particular junction. I hear the Honourable Member for St. John in the midst of his presentation, the cries for Messiah Street and improvements there as well as 4 roads. And I'm sure if we ask every single member of Parliament this morning to list and identify a roundabout where it's needed or a road improvement that is needed, we can create a nice long list to flood the newspapers tomorrow. My focus, Mr. Speaker, is really more to address priorities and to address in a systematic way the issues that are presenting us across the country. And while I know we will not get to every single issue, there are in a list of areas for attention that the ministry addresses in order of a priority system. Now, safety on the roads generally, I think, is something that I can't allow this debate to pass without speaking to. A lot of emphasis will be placed, no doubt, on the issue of what the ministry is doing, what the government is doing. But before I get to that, I think it is important to also mention some trends in terms of what we are seeing based on the data that is coming to us as well. We're seeing a lot of people running red lights. We're seeing a lot of people moving quickly to get to their destination, perhaps starting a little later than they're supposed to, and then somehow believing that the traffic in front of them is just going to move speedily. There's a lot of road rage being created from our PSV sectors to ordinary people driving on the roads. These are the realities. People are driving a little faster where the temptation is there because the roads may be free, and as a consequence, sometimes accidents are caused because of that. So before I begin on what the ministry is doing in addition to the roundabouts and other safety mechanisms, I think it is also a call for people to not just slow down, but to be a bit more cautious in how they use the nation's roads. We have potholes, and some will say that the potholes tend to slow you down, but that is another issue that we are also addressing, and I would urge persons, knowing that we have our challenges in terms of the road infrastructure, that we need to take our time a bit more in getting to the destinations that we have to. We are behind, yes, in terms of the improvements to road infrastructure, because this government is playing catch up after not having many of the roads, the potholes fixed for a number of years. Even the road markings were not being done at the speed that they need to be done. We had issues where I think the last speed humps that I recall being done was probably in the Golden Rot area when I was not even the minister then. And those were concrete humps that were installed in the area of a play park. We have moved away from that particular methodology in terms of using the concrete structures, and the ministry is currently exploring a type of speed hump which you would see perhaps more in like the Coverley area and in some of the residential developments, where we would have a more rubber mapped speed hump that can be used in and around residential communities, in and around our schools, in and around our community centers. And why are we moving in that direction, Mr. Speaker? Because quite simply, I can't ignore what I've heard at the Paris Speaks. I can't ignore the concerns that my colleagues have raised and the country has raised in terms of people slowing down. Every time that we build a new road, there is an automatic request across the country for speed humps to be installed. And while it is that we will not install speed humps as a calming measure on every highway or on every major road, the reality is that there are some areas that we believe are now necessary for us to explore this type of system to be able to help us to do some traffic calming across communities. And I'm sure that each of the members of parliament can certainly identify even where there are some who are not sure exactly where they're running. I'm sure that they can perhaps, pick and choose a couple of areas that constituents may have commented that may be required to have these types of traffic calming measures. Now, that's not the only type of traffic calming measure, but it is one that we feel in the interim can certainly give a great uptake in addressing some of the concerns that have been raised. I recall saying to my staff that when they solved one issue in terms of speed humps along the Golden Rock Main Road, the commuters then took the Stratford Hill area, and there are no speed humps on that road. But what we have is a number of little children who, because it's a densely populated area, are traversing that area, sometimes running out of their homes to get to the play park, and there are no attendant speed humps in that particular road. Now, these are the types of things that I believe that this type of measure is going to be designed to be able to address in the short term, while we look at all of the other mechanisms for being able to slow traffic across the country. The other area is in relation to streetlights. I haven't heard anyone mention it as yet, but again, streetlights is also another mechanism that we have used and continue to use in relation to road safety. Now, our relationship with the Barbados Light and Power allows for us to be able to indicate to them where the areas are that we would want to see additional lights on poles. The ministry has also explored the issue of the solar lighting to be able to address the blind spots that we have in a number of areas. And in recent times, we have also had the Barbados Police Service raise with us a number of specific roads and areas, corners and stuff. Not only that we as a ministry have had to designate resources to clean, to ensure that people can traverse easily and people can see what is happening in their communities, but also they've highlighted the need for street lights to be in place in some of those areas. So our approach going forward from a road safety methodology is really not just to have the traditional lighting and improvements in traditional areas using the lights from Light and Power, but also to have a program which allows for us to be able to use the solar lighting within the inner communities and even on the roads where we have been building out. So for instance, you may start to see some within the Scotland district because we are spending a lot of money in the Scotland district making improvements to the road infrastructure. But road infrastructure on its own is not just the improvements is not the be all and end all. We also have to take into account things like the bus stops, the sidewalks. We have to look at the road markings. We have to put down the cat eyes. And of course, the biggest issue is also making the countryside come alive by the introduction of lighting. So the countryside does not have to feel as though it is not just have been neglected, but that it is isolated because it does not have the appropriate lighting in place in those communities. We also are mindful of the area that was mentioned by the Honourable Member who spoke before me in relation to the Hannes-Windsor area where the child was knocked down. We've seen a few of those recently. Again, it goes back to my earlier point that we also need to ensure that drivers are a bit more vigilant on the roads. We expect children to do things impulsively, and therefore, as drivers, we have to anticipate that there may be a child coming across the road. Equally, the ministry has been ramping up its road marking program In particular, you will see a lot of activity around the time when children go back to school to make sure that when they start the school term that the road markings are in place. Can we improve on this? Yes, I believe we can. And we've been exploring whether we may need to outsource some of the works that are done across the ministry in relation to road markings and other things that are pretty simple for people to do, but will follow the standards of the Ministry of Transport and Works. So those road markings, we have also partnered with some of the persons in the private sector. I believe that launch will happen very shortly, but we are not operating in a vacuum. We've had very good corporate entities coming on board to work with us to supply paints, to be able to allow the ministry to advance its program. And we encourage corporate entities to continue to come on board so that we can accelerate the number of teams that we can put on the road to be able to get these road markings done in short order as well. The other area that that I'm mindful of, and I think I should mention this, is the Lodge Road area, because again, I recall having a management meeting recently, this is Lodge Road in Christchurch, to raise the issue of concerns that have been previously raised in relation to the Lodge Road community. A number of people had lost their lives on that road. A number of accidents have also taken place there. And I would have indicated previously that when we were doing the Mill and Pave program, one of the things that we had looked at was whether we could have included the Lodge Road Christchurch area on our list. The challenge was that it required significant means replacement and improved, obviously, lighting and sidewalks in that area. And the other thing that it's going to require is acquisition of lands, because in order to widen the road, in order to be able to accommodate the sidewalks, whether on one side or both sides of the road, there's going to have to be some acquisition. The project has to be designed before we can build it. And therefore, there is a process that must take place, just as we have done on the road roundabouts and on other roads, to ensure that we give the commuters the opportunity to have a decent surface that they can drive on. So one of the things that we have done as an interim measure is that we are waiting the Light and Power to be able to install some lights from the corner by Gall Hill, going all up to where the industrial park is by the roundabout to improve the lighting on that area. That is irrespective of the fact that the designs still have to be done for Lodge Road, and that will be done under a design and build. The good news is that the design and build for this project is also going out in the tender for the Groves roundabout as well as the Windsor-Brighton roundabout. So they're all in a batch together for tendering. So really, the ball is now in the Chief Procurement Officer's court for her to be able to allocate a date so that the tender documents can certainly be uploaded so that the contractors can tender for those designs. But that area is like many others in the country where it didn't obviously start out being so high traffic. Since that area would have emerged, we would have had a lot of industrial activity in the industrial estate. We've also seen the increase in traffic coming from the Oystons area. You have the school also within the surrounding community. And then traffic comes off of the ABC highway and takes the connecting road to come down Lodge Road to get to all of the other areas along that stretch. So we have seen the increase in the traffic, and therefore with the increase in the traffic, requires us in many districts to be able to make changes to the design, the layout, and certainly to be able to have a systematic way of being able to design a number of these new roads as well. So it is unfortunate, yes, that there has been loss of life, and we take no pride in anybody losing their lives. But we are working in the ministry to knock off a number of these long-standing issues that have caused accidents and that has caused a loss of life. Now, what does that mean for the rest of Barbados? It means that while we prioritize these, it means that there are some roads and some residential roads that will not get the attention, because if we have to prioritize, I'm telling you straight, Mr. Speaker, we're going to prioritize those areas where they have been of significant concern to the general public. And therefore, the Lodge Road, the areas relating to Groves roundabout and the Groves Road, along with Windsor-Brighton, are roads that are of significant priority right now for the ministry. Windsor-Brighton roundabout is probably going to come in around $3 million. The Groves roundabout, along with the infrastructure works on the actual road with Sweet Vale, is going to be another 5 million. And therefore, you can start to appreciate that with these sums, it means that some of the roads that people expect to be done quickly, we cannot always get to them. What we have done in the ministry, though, is to have different tiers of roads. So we have high priority roads and roundabouts, but we also have a number of the residential roads that you've started to see across the country being done in residential communities, both across the rural areas as well as across the urban corridor as well. And I think, Mr. Speaker, in your constituency, you have been the beneficiary of the program focused on roads that we could not get to on the mill and pave, but roads that required us to basically improve drainage and to certainly do the upgrades to eliminate the potholes. Potholes are something that I think, I'm not going to say we have to live with, but we're going to have to live with it until we are able to get the pothole patching machines in, which I hope will come before the end of this year. We've placed an order for about 6 pothole patching machines to be able to assist us with the carve-out of large areas of potholes, because the reality is that a lot of the roads that people complain about really need a full rehabilitation. It is not just a simple cutout of a pothole and fix it temporarily, but the truth is that when you look at the long-term cost of the investment into repairing the road, it is a significant cost, and we are trying to get the resources in place to be able to make sure that we can do full rehabilitation of many of the roads. So the pothole program is continuing. We had some issues with the equipment recently, but we have been able to get that back on track. But the pothole patching machines, of which there are 6, will hopefully be here before the end of the year, so that we can have that put into place certainly for the end of this financial year going into the following year. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe that today's discussion is really about an investment in public safety. It does bother me that this has taken 15 years to come to fruition, but as I started at the outset by saying, it does please me that we have been able to gather all of the ministers to be able to push at the level of the bureaucracy to be able to break down the barriers and certainly be able to move this process along so that we can see this level of improvement taking place across the country. And I believe that accidents must not spur us into action. It is really time that we recognize that when we have these types of accidents, or even where there's a loss of life, that it has a significant impact on families. And I say it to my staff all the time that we must not wait until something happens in order to act. And I say that to each and every one of you in this place as well. Too often, we take too long across ministries to communicate with each other, to push the processes along. Meanwhile, we're getting the phone calls saying that another accident has taken place or another person has lost their life. It is not fair to the families, and I do feel that we are making some inroads, but we still have a little bit more of some roads to travel to be able to get us to where we want to. The final point, Mr. Speaker, though, is that on the issue of the wider traffic management, yes, we've been exploring the issue of the park and ride. Park and ride has been a discussion that has been going on for a long, long time. And we have identified areas where we would want to do the park and ride. Perhaps the cricket exercise at Kensington Oval would have sparked the relationships between the various entities to flesh out how we can better improve the park and ride situation. But there's a reality. However many cars we spoke that we have on the roads, Bajans are not putting down their cars unless they know that there is reliable transport system to get them to and fro. So let's talk it straight. You drive on any road across Barbados and you will see majority females. Drive on the highway, Mr. Speaker, and you go up the road. One person is driving the vehicle, and in many cases it is a female behind the wheel. Therefore, it says to me that women in particular will not put down vehicles unless they are comfortable that a bus will come on time, a ZR will come on time, a ZM will come on time. And those are the improvements that we're trying to make to the public transport system. Obviously, you're dealing with a system that has, I would have to say, has been allowed to get away with murder for a long time. But we are trying our best with the introduction of mass transit over the next few months to be able to arrest some of the issues that have been plaguing the system for a long time. The disorder that we see on the roads, we're trying to address that now. There'll be a public education campaign launching shortly in relation to the PSV sector, because safety is not just about speed humps and street lights, but safety is also how the people who move people across the country behave in relation to our roads as well. And therefore, it is not lost on us that while we have tightened the rules of Transport Authority and tightened the teeth that they have, we also now have to make sure that people understand that their consequences must also have actions as well. We've been working behind the scenes to deal with the issues with the PSV operators, and some have been compliant. Others, I think we now need to ramp up and allow everybody to be a part of understanding what is expected from our drivers on the road. I've seen a number of the practices where drivers are not wearing shoes, the appropriate shoes, despite the regulations speaking to what they should wear. And I just want to signal that we are coming after them as well, because it cannot be that you are disregarding basic rules in regards to safety. I can't drive in my car with my slippers on, and I'm not going to drive barefoot either, because I understand that there's a danger, not just to me, but to other road users as well. And I believe that if you are carrying having in your custody ordinary Barbadians traversing across our roads, that there are certain basic things that we need to make sure happens. I always say that without order, there will be disorder. And therefore, we will work with the PSV sector. The associations have been very cooperative, and we will continue to work with them to make sure that we're able to arrest some of these practices that have arisen in our society, that perhaps are just a microcosm of what is happening in other parts of society, but we will do our part from the Ministry of Transport and Works as well as Transport Authority to arrest those issues. But to the wider point as to whether people will put their vehicles down, what the government has been doing is ensuring that we have the additional buses. So we have increased the fleet to 89. We still have some challenges. And why do we have challenges? We have challenges, Mr. Speaker, because we don't have the full complement of the buses that we really need in terms of our electric bus fleet. We have another 35 buses on order, and they are due. They're in production right now. They are due to arrive in the island in December. When those buses arrive, it will allow us to now top up the existing complement and hopefully then be able to address a number of the shortfalls that we're seeing across the entire country. But we are working to get to the point where we can reduce the concerns and the bugbears that Barbadians have been experiencing, especially in our rural districts where I know that people have felt forgotten for a long time. Lastly, I would just mention that on the issue of safety, I've spoken before about this issue of bridges, for instance, where the 1984 Didier study spoke to a number of the bridges across the country which were in dire need of repair and certainly maintenance. Apart from the Scotland District project, which, as you know, is a $230 million project which is underway, we've got about 16 projects in progress, about 16 million of that having been spent to date, and works are continuing across the rural parishes of the country. We also have bridges within that project that are being redesigned and rehabilitated. But we have also taken it upon us in the ministry to be able to identify a number of bridges across the country that are also in disrepair. Because imagine you had a study done in 1984 and then no maintenance program being put in place since 1984 to now in any significant way to be able to clean and clear around the bridges, to make sure that when people are hiking, that the areas that they're hiking in and around are safe. Some of these bridges are connecting bridges that bring communities together, and we recognize that there have been challenges in terms of being able to maintain and repair these bridges. So what have we done as a ministry? We haven't simply posted on social media as others have done to create fear and alarm in the minds of ordinary Barbadians. We have determined that in order to correct the problem, that we had to engage the expertise to be able to make sure that we can assess the bridges again, bring it up to date, make sure that we know where these bridges are in terms of geotagging, put the maintenance program in place for the bridges as an interim measure to make sure that we know where they are, we can clean in and around them. And the member for St. Andrew is also working with the team at the University of the West Indies to be able to do a kind of sideline project, which allows us, because we recognize that this is also part of our heritage, to allow for the identification and information about these bridges across the country. Because again, I don't believe that I am just Minister of Public Works, but I believe that I must use all of what I am in terms of creative and knowing my history to make sure that we are able to have other areas in and around the bridges that are of benefit to not just Barbadians, but also to tourists. So the Honourable Member is working on that particular project, given his background in research and certainly in history, to work with the technical team at the University of the West Indies to be able to give us a project that not only cleans and clears the bridges, but also treats to these bridges with their history. Because our forefathers helped to build out these bridges, Mr. Speaker. And I believe that there must be a recognition, if you get the opportunity to see some of the handiwork and the work that has been done in and around them, it is something that I believe that we ought to highlight and certainly to cherish wherever we can in terms of the preservation. So that project is ongoing. We've also gone further afield to make sure that we've engaged expertise outside of Barbados to look at another 16 bridges. And those bridges, we've already gotten 3 designs back from the contractor. We are reviewing those designs now, but areas like Dodds Bridge, I think the one up by the Fun Ranch, and others, we have started to look at those where, again, these are areas where the public has said, in every parish speaks, that we have issues in these areas, and we are taking them systematically to be able to address each and every one. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I reiterate that this is really an investment in public safety. I would want to thank the Honourable Minister and his team, member for St. George South, for taking my phone calls at all kinds of hours to be able to move this process along, and certainly for the work done by the former ministers to be able to move the process along. But we're really glad that we're at this point where we can not only do the acquisition of these parcels of land, but also that we can move to the tender stage on not just this, but also all of the other projects that have caused Barbadians a lot of hurt and pain as a result of accidents and certainly loss of life. With those few words, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the other members for giving way to me, to give me an opportunity to join in this debate, as I have a funeral that I have to go to quite shortly. Let me first say, Mr. Speaker, that I completely support this resolution. It is absolutely important and long in coming that we were able to put the appropriate measure in place at that junction. And let me say, Mr. Speaker, this road traffic improvement, and as the acting Prime Minister said, investments in road safety is not sexy or exciting. It's not sexy or exciting to the average person. But it becomes exciting and sexy when one of your family members is involved in an accident at that location or any of those locations. It becomes important and exciting when a family member loses their life at a location. I've lost 2 family members on the roads of Barbados, Mr. Speaker. Road safety is always paramount in my mind. Deborah Clark and Ferenz Dugid lost their lives on these roads in Barbados. When I became Minister of Transport, I thought that I had to see what was possible to be able to improve road safety in this country. There was a program that we found there called the International Road Assessment Program, the IRAP. And the IRAP identified areas where simple measures could improve road safety at certain junctions. So we set about looking to improve those junctions. We improved St. Silas, and we improved, as the Minister said, we improved St. Silas by putting lights there, and I'll talk about lights versus roundabouts in a little while. We improved the Garfield Sobers roundabout by putting that additional lane to the left to improve traffic and also to improve access for pedestrians and so on. We improved Rendezvous Hill by widening it and putting a pedestrian stairwell together with a protected pedestrian stairwell, because a guy actually got trapped and his legs were crushed between the walls at Rendezvous Hill. We improved Coverley, and a new roundabout was put at Coverley. We improved Codrington as well, the small roundabout there by Codrington, where Codrington Road joins the Combermere. And we looked to and started designs, looked to finish the designs for the one that we're doing today, which is Windsor Brighton. We also had designs that we found there, and I'm surprised that I didn't hear the minister say, designs were actually done for Turnpike as well. And you know that Turnpike is also a roundabout that needs to be done. So we also put a countdown light at Marhill Street. And what you know is the countdown light is at Marhill Street when you come from St. Michael's Row into Marhill Street. It actually tells pedestrians 10, 9, 8 when they can cross, because that is a well-known cross-section where pedestrians cross, whether the light is with them or not. So we tried our best to be able to put appropriate measures in place to improve road safety at various junctions and various roads across Barbados. But it was not ended. We identified about 20 roads or junctions, and I'm happy to see that subsequent ministers have continued that work to be able to improve road safety, because at the end of the day, as the Acting Prime Minister said, we owe it to the people. It's one thing to say that, yes, we're doing this, we're doing that, but when families are involved, when people lose a loved one, a brother, a sister, a cousin, an uncle, an aunt, a mother, a father, or sometimes a mother, a father, and a brother all in one, and leave then a young child to have to fend for themselves and then passed over, or then have to be adopted by a relative. These things matter. And these things are very, very important to our society and to our community. I want to talk a little bit about lights versus roundabouts, because as you could hear in the undertones from my colleague from St. George South, that there's significant debate about lights versus roundabouts. So let me first say at the outset, I am a proponent for lights over roundabouts. I heard my friend say, I guess he's suggesting that roundabouts, he's a proponent of roundabouts over lights, but I'll explain why. I'm going to explain why I prefer lights over roundabouts. The first thing is this: traffic lights rather than roundabouts. Traffic lights, first thing. And let me give a simple anecdotal thing first. The corner of Culloden Road and Culmarock. Culloden Road and Culmarock, when I was a boy, I went to school on Pine Road, and I traversed from Dayton Road, where I lived, to Pine Road. That used to be traffic lights in the early days. The wisdom of the then MTW decided that it was too much trouble as a traffic light. They acquired significant, as we're doing now, acquisition of land for areas. I remember very well, there used to be the Indian family living at the Blue House on the corner. Their land was acquired, and they made a roundabout. It was called the Ernest Dayton Motley Roundabout, Mr. Speaker. After years of recognizing that the roundabout was failing, and why was it failing? It was because the quantum of traffic had superseded the design. So what do we have there now? Back to traffic lights. Back to traffic lights. So what is the lesson from that? I can tell you what the lesson is. Roundabouts are better to slow down traffic. Traffic lights are better for high traffic areas. And let me go further. When demographics change, say for instance, a big development goes on at one side of the intersection or another side of the intersection, you can't go and redesign the roundabout, but you can change the timing on traffic lights. So the malleability of traffic lights makes it a better solution than roundabouts. That's the second reason. Let me give you the third reason. Now, in the technology era, Mr. Speaker, you can have what's called smart traffic lights. What does that mean? I know you can have smart roundabouts, but you can have smart traffic lights. What does that mean? When you approach, say for instance, an emergency vehicle, an ambulance, a police vehicle, or even a shuttle from a park and ride is approaching the traffic light, there is technology that can cause that traffic light to turn green, which means it stops the others on the intersection and allows the emergency vehicle to go through. It also allows the shuttle, for argument's sake. Say we get the park and rides that the minister spoke about. Put those in place. It means that when people are encouraged to get on a shuttle, because shuttles get the opportunity to get green lights all the way through. Roundabouts can't do that. Let me give you another reason. You know, the land of roundabouts is a place called Milton Keynes in the UK. I know it well, I used to play rugby there. In the UK, which is famous for roundabouts, they now have traffic lights on those roundabouts, Mr. Speaker. They now have signalized the roundabouts, so they've added traffic lights to roundabouts. Well, therefore, it tells you they could have started with traffic lights in the first place. So, of course, I am not a traffic engineer, but I have recognized the benefits of traffic lights over roundabouts. And all I would say, as the minister continues on the resolution to acquire the land, and I agree with him, they are horses for courses. In this particular instance, I fully agree in a roundabout, and I'll explain to you why. Remember, I said traffic lights are for high traffic areas, roundabouts are to slow down traffic. This particular intersection is not high traffic, it is high speed. So a roundabout here is absolutely the correct design for that location. That's the first thing. The second thing, there's something called sight lines. And I'll give you an example. I'll try to make it as simple as I can. Normal cross intersections, perpendicular like that, are amenable to either roundabouts or traffic lights. However, this particular intersection, the sight lines are bad. It means that it is not a normal 90-degree forecross, but is in fact an X. What does that mean? That means at certain places when people approach the intersection, when they look left or right, depending on where they're coming from, they have to look past 90 degrees. And having to look past 90 degrees means that your sight vision or your sight lines change, and it makes it more dangerous. And this is exactly the reason why this area is begging, and has been begging for years, for a roundabout rather than a traffic lights. And also one of the reasons why it is important, because it's caused so many accidents in that area, because the sight lines are bad. So, although I am a proponent for one, I do accept that in one case over the other, it depends on each particular situation. But if there is a toss-up between 50% roundabout, 50% traffic light, I will always come down on traffic lights. So, Mr. Speaker, this is long in coming. It is absolutely essential. There are others that need to be done, as we mentioned, especially Turnpike. Turnpike is becoming a problem from a traffic point of view as well. It is dangerous because of the sight lines, because it is not a forecross in the true sense, and it is important that we get these done and get them done quickly. Because this administration must recognize, and has recognized, that traffic has become an issue in this country. Partly because of the quantum of vehicles that we have on the roads, and partly because of the design of Barbados. And let's get real. The British designed Barbados in a system of what we call spoke and hub. So 7 spokes, highway 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, coming down to the hub at Bridgetown. Not the best design. In fact, they themselves are not recognizing it, and that's why in the UK, you have the M25, which is a circle going around. You have the North Circular and the South Circular, which is, again, circles going around. The circular, or the way of getting around in those areas, is better than a spoke and hub. Because what a spoke and hub does is it draws everything down to a focus at the hub. And this is why we have that long traffic problems in early morning or evening going on the way out. It's better to have a grid, because a grid doesn't focus into the hub like how our current design does. But having said that, we recognize that we have a traffic issue. We recognize that we have to do something about it. Park and rides is one thing. Sharing rides also. Having times when today I drive, tomorrow you drive, the next day another person drives. Sharing the rides as well is another opportunity. And we have to look at new and innovative ways. Staggered times. I remember when I was a minister, I spoke about staggered times for schools. And we have to get back to that, to look to see what we can do, what innovative and new things we can come up with to improve traffic and improve the lives of the people of this country. With those few words, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable St. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to say many thanks to the honourable members who have started on this route. I know what I want to say may last for 2 hours, but I know the time is limited, and therefore I wish to indicate and support much of what has been said here this morning. I intended to come with a parliamentary question, I must tell you, at some point, but now that I am getting so much of the ideas coming through and the plans the government has at this level, I really am very happy. I want to indicate from the outset that there are needs for more roundabouts in Barbados. But I speak specifically to St. Michael and St. Thomas. There are other areas, but that is my role here today, where when we get by Kelsey Supermarket, the lines are as long as taking you all the way back up to the junction coming through from Cambridge Road. It is a dangerous road. It needs a traffic light urgently. I also want, Mr. Speaker, to indicate that at the Kelsey Junction, right coming through from Huddersfield turning, around the area of Huddersfield turning, there is so much congestion and so much danger because people are coming right out of the roundabout, coming from Waterford End, and the speed with which they are coming, you have to literally steal out to get out. I'm surprised that more accidents aren't there, and I think urgent consideration must be taken in respect of that general area coming through from Baby's Lane and coming all the way down by Kelsey's. That is a death trap that needs to be addressed, and I'm glad that the Honourable Minister in her presentation spoke about it. Either she'll put, well, I don't think a roundabout would be the best, but a traffic light, because that is a very heavy area where residents live, and I think it will be a welcoming experience for all. My other concern, sir, is to do with markings in the road. And I believe that we need to do like some other countries where we're using paint, but the paint is not lasting. Even on the road that has Barber Green done, I call it Barber Green, or they paved the Barber Green. As soon as the rain falls, and in a place like where I live, sir, it rains every day. Not that I have many good roads, but it rains every day. And in no space of time, the white lines are washed out, or the yellow lines. Take, for example, coming down Ashford Hill, where water comes down in torrents. The paint goes quickly. I believe that it's about time that the government comes up with some kind of plan from the distinguished persons who guide the Ministry of Public Works and Transport to be able to use some kind of material, like something I saw, I think, in Canada or the United States, where it seems as though they're mixing sand with the paint. And that lasts for many more months or years compared to just the regular paint, because that use of that paint is a very costly exercise, and then persons have to go block the road to put in the paint, to do the painting, and then within a matter of weeks, you're juggling to cross the streets. I think that needs to be urgently examined in order for us to get where we're at. Sidewalks are important now. We're talking about 100,000 vehicles on the road. And the worst are the ZRs, Mr. Speaker. I am tired. I live in rural Barbados. The behavior is so ridiculous. And if you don't have sidewalks that we can jump out of the road, God help us in Barbados, not only in St. Thomas, but across the country. The disorderly behavior needs to be addressed. And they understand they want to start working from 6 o'clock. Some of them should not be able to start to work from 6 in the morning because of the recklessness on the streets, the cursing, the unkempt workers on the buses. Who is managing them? Some of the vehicles are not working properly. You can hear it. Some of them also, you can tell that they're not stopping at traffic lights. They're doing as they like. Somebody has to control these ZRs. And I pray to God, Mr. Speaker, that none hits me. Because if one hits me, I know I will have to die. Because I know that I will have to retaliate in a way that is not what is natural for me as a loving, kind person. I have a difficulty, Mr. Speaker, the loud music and the dirty lyrics. And they're always off route. So even the Sturgis route now is one of the worst that you could ever want. And to hear of school children who, when they get in, they don't take the bus fare from the school children. They're telling them they have to pay full fare, if not get off. Or they're putting out little children and putting in adults in order to facilitate the traveling for that adult. And little children are knocking all around the road. It is wrong, and we need to address it. This country is going down a terrible road with those public service vehicles, particularly the ZRs. But I wanted to say, Mr. Speaker, let me get to St. Thomas, because I might have to call that now lost to a mass. With the challenges that we're having, and I must tell you, the Honourable Minister has been trying, and I must thank sincerely the Permanent Secretary and his staff who did a tour with me 3 Fridays ago. And they actually saw. I understand that in St. Thomas it rains every day. And therefore, we're going to have lots of water. The drainage is poor, and so bridges are being damaged. There are many challenges. But I want to indicate, Mr. Speaker, I believe that more can be done for us in rural Barbados, where it rains every day, and there are not proper channels where the water can go off the road and make life better for us. Yes, I have gotten some improvement, but it is unsatisfactory at this time, especially now that the road is closed at the Bridgefield area, and people have to be juggling all over and to go through those dark roads, not even a tower light to go through Vaucluse, Mr. Speaker. So you can imagine me going to a little fair, going to something wherever in the night time, driving as a single woman. And then I have to go through those lonesome roads, 3 and 4 acres. So, 3 and 4 miles of darkness, and it really is not accommodating at all. The people in the parish are extremely upset at the way it is being done. And therefore, I want, Mr. Speaker, to indicate as well that there seem to be no synergies with the agencies that offer services to Barbados. I know in the past, under a Barbados Labour Party administration, under the Honourable leader from St. Peter, now deceased, Mr. Speaker, there were arrangements for the road works, the water authority, the light and power, the persons dealing with gas and telephone. When they were finished digging up the road, doing whatever excavation, somebody from the Ministry of Public Works and Transport had to be there to make sure that when they were finished digging up the road, that at least the road was being resealed, and there were always separate funds available to be able to cover back those areas that were open up. Now, Water Authority is doing as it likes. Every day there's another opening, but no closure to it, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, sir, how angry I am. I am really very, very angry at what has happened Tuppence and Halfpenny Gully, as well as the junction leading to the post office at St. Thomas. March was 3 years, Mr. Speaker, that they started to build up a wall, build up what would have been rock surface that was cut to make a sidewalk, so people going Lion Castle and those communities can get in with safety because it is a bus route. Mr. Speaker, till today, it is not completed yet. All of the cans are there. You're not seeing anybody on the job. And I'm forever grumbling and calling and asking. Nobody can answer me. And I'm extremely disappointed with how we are operating as a people. I am not saying that the people in the Ministry of Public Works are not doing their work. I am saying the supervision is the problem. And therefore, I would wish for something to happen as soon as possible and make sure that there's some officer or some officers in the Ministry of Public Works who, when the telephone company is going to dig up, or the water authority, or whichever entity that those people come back, because it's always in the money in the budget. And if they dig up the road, Mr. Speaker, and displace people, they should be able to use their budget to come back and reseal it to make safety on the road for all of the road users. I also want, Mr. Speaker, to indicate that there are other challenges. Even the telephone company now, where there are vines growing on them that they're reaching down to the ground, and they can carry you now, Mr. Speaker, to the junction of the Vault Road and Carrington's Village. You cannot see ahead. The transport buses are passing there. Every tree and every piece of wood is just destroying the roof of the buses, or the trucks, or whichever other vehicles are tall like that. So where are we in this respect? And I hurt because it is happening under our watch. And it's not because the workers are not working in the ministry. It is because somebody has to be assigned specifically responsibilities or a team to make sure that that aspect of it happens. I also want, Mr. Speaker, to talk about the lighting, because we're in rural Barbados, so we hardly have any lights. But when you go down that Lancaster Road, Mr. Speaker, from St. Thomas Parish Church all the way down to nearly St. Lucie, it is the poorest lighting you could ever want, or none at all. And for many, many kilometers, there is no lighting at all. When people get off the bus and working in the hotel, and they have to walk down to go down through Lancaster, to get down through Morgan, or they have to go to any of the communities, it is stark dark. They have to ask families and friends to come and meet them at the bus stop because of the darkness. I believe that we too in rural Barbados deserve the benefits that the rest of this country receive whenever it happens. My other request, Mr. Speaker, first, sir, is for an urgent light. I've written a question on it, not a parliamentary question, but a question as a resolution in another place, because when you get to the Warren's Polyclinic area, there are 3 pedestrian crossings. One nearest to when you come out of Warren's, coming to the Polyclinic, and the traffic is flowing there heavily. I don't understand why Barbadians don't seem to understand that you slow down when you come to a roundabout. And right by that roundabout, there's a pedestrian crossing. By the time you get to the Polyclinic on your left, if you're coming from Jackson, there is another pedestrian crossing. And then when you go to where the ZRs will park illegally, there's another crossing. For me, the crossing that is closest to the roundabout, coming from Huddersfield, turning and coming down, or coming up from this section over by the, I'm trying to remember the name of the roundabout now, but if you're coming in from Redmond's Village, there's one coming towards town, those pedestrian crossings are too close. No, the ones bringing you to the same Warren's Polyclinic. And I'm making that case because I request traffic lights to be placed there at Warren's, nearest to where the junction is. After you pass Warren's entrance, there is a bus stop. The bus stop and the pedestrian crossing are almost simultaneously working together, which is against any practice at all. But if a traffic light is put there, as soon as you come out of the roundabout and you come to pass the entrance to the Polyclinic, then put a pedestrian crossing there. A pedestrian crossing is there, but hardly anybody respects it. A traffic light or a light like the one you put by the schools, where that light flashes all the time, because you're talking about individuals who come with walking sticks. They come with wheelchairs. They don't have anybody to bring them. Somebody assists them to get over the bus or whatever traffic they're in. You have some who have prostheses. There's some of them who are so elderly, they can't get across the road, and that road has about 3 lanes because one turns into Eden Lodge Terrace or whatever it is called. And then to compound it all, the ZRs line off to block off even the Eden Lodge Road. Sometimes it's 3 and 4, and I'm thankful within the last few weeks, the police officers are there. As soon as the police officers leave, Mr. Speaker, they go back and block the entrances again. And when you're crossing, to go across from either side, it is the most dangerous thing you could ever want. I have never seen a society fall apart with discipline in this way at all, because we believe that we should give people freedom. And when you give them the freedom, the latitude, they can do as they like. We have to bring back law and order in this country if we are to continue to live safe and well. The other thing I want to say, Mr. Speaker, is to do with the bridges. The honourable member would have mentioned that in her presentation. I have about 6 bridges in St. Thomas. Again, I want to thank the Permanent Secretary and his team. I drove in a vehicle that was like a ZR the last 2 Fridays. And I was really very happy that I was accommodated. The Honourable Minister gave the permission because St. Thomas hardly has 3 roads now to lead to our houses. And it really is heart-wrenching, Mr. Speaker. You are living on a section different from mine. But where we are, Toppings and Hampney Bridge is ready to collapse. Endeavour Bridge broke about 10 years ago. And the last administration brought in the workers, and we thought that they would have fixed it. People who are living in Lancaster, Mr. Speaker, if there's an accident in there, there has been recently, nobody can get out if they're living beyond that. Because the Endeavour Bridge that would have taken you off to the Hyman Hill Road to get out as an escape road, that is no longer there. I want to recommend, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we get it back, because that is what will help to ease residents, that they can get to work, that they can get to wherever they have to go, instead of being marooned in the village that they were born and raised in. That is another matter of concern that I would like to see, Mr. Speaker, come to fruition. Now, we have problems with bus stops, but you know I live in the heart of Barbados, Mr. Speaker, and when you trample the heart, you take away the whole body. I have places of interest there, Mr. Speaker, that were there in existence before me or you, or even perhaps this Parliament, from the beginning of Barbados. And Mr. Speaker, the signage is the worst. So you talk about Westmore Hall Gully, you talk about Harrison's Cave, you talk about going to the Flower Forest. And every single one of the signs is no longer in operation. So you can't see a sign saying Allen View anymore, or Harrison's Cave, the 8th wonder of the world, or whatever was there before. And I'm not saying again that the persons are not doing their work. I believe that there has to be segmentation of community, of not just community groups, because people in the community at Allen View are top of the line when it comes to Harrison's Cave and so on. But because of the signage that is so poor, can you imagine visitors coming to the island, Mr. Speaker, and rambling, going all the way down Springvale, St. Andrew, when they want to get to Harrison's Cave, because the signage is gone and nothing has been done over the years to be able to treat to it. And the same thing with if you want to go to the Flower Forest. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to conclude in a minute. There are too many challenges, and there is nobody to give us the answers in the way we would like. People living in Jukes tenantry, and the horrible condition of the roads, Mr. Speaker. When I came through down to the bottom of Ashfield Hill this morning, there's enough water that a Mini Cooper would not be able to pass through it. And the same thing is happening across the parish. And I know that this is God's rain, yes, but drainage. How can we get the wells in the parish, across the island cleared when the wells are no longer holding any water, because St. Thomas is a parish where it rains every day. I believe St. George has the same situation. It's not a problem because we're glad for the weather. But I believe that something better has to be done. And my final comment, Mr. Speaker, we have so many plantations in St. Thomas that are out of operation. And the hurtful thing is that when we started to mechanize the stick sugar industry, all those plantation owners across the parish determined that what we had as gutters alongside the road to take the water off to go into the various, in the gutters, into certain aquifers, like if you were talking, coming down through Rugby to come down to Bridgefield, there was a very deep area there where the water will channel itself its way all the way down through St. Michael and wherever. Mr. Speaker, every last plantation owner at that time infilled every gutter. No wonder why the Honourable Minister now has to be sending back. The bitumen is being lifted off the road every day because there's nowhere for the water to be channeled. And it is so unfortunate that we have to be suffering in this way all the time. For me, those drains, those gutters should be dug up, and the same plantation owners should be having to be able to work, to pay towards having it done, instead of the poor taxpayers. The government is paying through its nose, through ordinary people, the janitors and the persons working on the same roads and stuff, and it is their funds that are going in to help to upgrade these roads and these facilities. And I believe that there must be some arrangement. When you talk about Vaucluse Plantation, when you talk about Canefield, and these are people that all have millions of dollars, they're not doing anything about it. When you're talking about all the ones over in the St. Joseph section that is adjoining St. Thomas, When you're talking about the ones that are coming down through Hopewell, everybody, and that is why the water is now running on the highway and ripping up every piece of tar or bitumen that has been used, or Barbara Green, as it may be called. And therefore, we need, as a government, to call in all of those plantation owners that would not even grow anything but grass that is wild all over the place. The trees are joining into one another. They're not, even some of them have taken up the 6-foot or 4-foot position that should be for pedestrians, like in Rugby. Anybody walking on Rugby Road, Mr. Speaker, will get destroyed. I know that the buses are not going through there, but except to Charlton and Bridgefield, any resident living in 40 acres suffers. Any resident in Dings Village suffers. And that happens not only in St. Thomas, it's across rural Barbados. And therefore, I believe that we need to have some town hall meetings, not only with residents, but with business people, those people who own the plantations that perhaps are not even paying any taxes either, where the trees are taller than this building and impacting on others. I believe that we have to have community dialogue with all those property owners and others to be able to come to some resolution as to how can the residents of these parishes be safe as they travel to and fro, whether it be on foot or horse or vehicle or whatever the situation is. And so I would have taken the 2 hours, Mr. Speaker, because I've shortened what I want to say, but there's so many challenges that I did not know where to start. And I also want finally to say to the residents, not only of St. Thomas, but across Barbados, when you repair your house and you see a ravine, or you see some kind of depression, you don't just take the galvanized that you don't want, or the wood, and put it in it, because that is another artery or tributary where water has to go in order to get into the aquifers. A lot of communities are doing that. I should not have said finally, Mr. Speaker, because I need to just say at the end of it, Vaucluse Road, where the Ministry of, no, not just transport or what's now, the Ministry Clean and Green, Environment, was forced, Mr. Speaker, to go into the Vaucluse artery. Shop Hill, Vaucluse, the same Hangman's Hill, the same Jack in the Box Gully and Grandview, to go to remove hundreds of tons of things that are illegally dumped. They cleaned it up for the motor rally just last month. Removed all of it. I have all the photographs and everything, Mr. Speaker. Would you believe, Mr. Speaker, sir, mattresses, all the old stoves and the equipment in canteens or in hotels, lining Vaucluse Road again, Mr. Speaker? It is hurtful, it is shameful. Where are we going with the free education? When we know that when that illegal dumping is taking place, it's going to harbor vermin and so. And unfortunately, some of the people who are removing that kind of refuse from the places are being paid for haulers to dispose it in the mangrove landfill. Every road in St. Thomas now, Mr. Speaker, sir, that is a road that would not be having houses and so on, all through jukes, the mattresses, the old stoves, the old fridge, on top of Shop Hill, every little artery that you can see as a carrot road, Mr. Speaker. I want for the health inspectors to continue to do their work. I had a visit with them too, and they did a fairly good job. But I want all of the synergies to come together. And let us as a government and as a people work hand in hand to be able to make sure that our roads are safe, that our people are safer, and that, of course, the kind of recommendation that was made by the Honourable Member for St. George South to do with the roundabout, I'm sure that some attention will be paid to that as well, because safety of our people is paramount. We have one major hospital, Mr. Speaker, and it is because of the bad driving. It is because of the poor road conditions, particularly without sidewalks, that it is causing that hospital to be overrun. And it cannot service people in the way that it would have been designed. We need, as a people, to come together. Yes, we do the community speech and so, but we need to come together and send forward resolutions and see how best we can work together for the services in Barbados not only to be put in St. Michael and Christchurch, because those are tourism areas, but rural Barbados, St. George, St. Andrew, St. Thomas. Yes, the elements will impact on us because the rain falls there every day in those parishes. But we need proper drainage to be done, and we need for those who are blocking off the water courses to be dealt with by the court of law. That is the only way that we are going to get resolution, and there will be happy people already, where people will want to walk and want to serve or want to talk and want to do things together. But because of that disparity, we are not getting cohesive communities in the same way that we used to. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you sincerely for the opportunity to be able to speak. And as I conclude, the Honourable Minister is hearing me, Public Works Minister. There's absolutely no way that Bridgefield Road will be closed and the residents only heard by an ad on the radio. I am representing the people's interest as everybody else is. And I therefore want for the civil servants to give us in St. Thomas the treatment that is meted out if it was Maxwell, if it was Hastings, if it was Whole Town, Mr. Speaker. So we heard on the radio, or we saw somebody send a WhatsApp, Bridgefield is closed, and we have to go all through Ham Pond, all through Hyman's Hill, and not a light, Mr. Speaker. So when I leave to go anything to do with the society or the Labour Party at night, I am not going. And I don't expect people to go because it is pitch dark and dangerous. And the road is narrow, and now the buses are going through there too, and people have to walk long distances. It is not fair to us, the residents of the parish, nor it is not fair to those who are living in St. Michael that have to take those vehicles and get where they're going. I ask you, Mr. Speaker, I thank you, I should say, for giving me the privilege, and I want for us to have some dialogue with the public in a different way. We are doing many things that are pleasing people, but when it comes to the roads, and when it comes to drainage, and the other entities, the water authority, the light and power, the telephone company, the gas company, who in the ministry is responsible for following those projects, or who in the ministry is working with the private contractors who are doing work on our behalf to say this road has to be paved. In your contract, there has to be some money that you will reseal what you have dug up. I just want to get some answers, Mr. Speaker, sir, because at the end of the day, when I sit in my little village house, people call her Miss Ford. You know you're a good woman, but you just don't do nothing no more. You ain't doing no more for me, Miss Ford. And I cannot answer because they are feeling the pain and the suffering as all of us are as a people, because we will get challenges in the community where we live. But I want more efforts and more funding and more services to reach the people of the parish of St. Thomas, whether it be Redmonds Village, where the Honourable Member for St. James Central is, or whoever. The heart of Barbados is St. Thomas. We want to be able to receive those benefits that others receive. I am not going to be quibbling now about any roundabout, because if I don't have a good road, the roundabout will not make a sense. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Lucie.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to make a brief contribution to this important debate. But before I do so, Mr. Speaker, I want to publicly, from the floor of this House, offer my condolences to the family, friends, work colleagues, and all such persons who would have been known or would have known the late Alvin Toppin, who was supposed to be my opponent in St. Lucie. Death has no barriers, and I am truly saddened at his sudden passing, as I went to express my deep condolences to his parents, who are constituents of mine on July 3rd, 2025. My condolences to him and his family and his work colleagues, etc. Mr. Speaker, I entered this debate to briefly support the resolution brought to this honorable chamber. And I'm not going to take as long as my colleague, the honorable member for St. Thomas, who has some very copious notes made, and who made a very valuable contribution highlighting the issues and the problems that we in that represent rural constituencies face from time to time. And I can identify with a number of those things, those matters which she raised. Mr. Speaker, the resolution before us in terms of the acquisition of that land for the purpose of building a roundabout is extremely important. It shows that this government is not a government just to talk, but to bring solutions and to take corrective steps, measures to deal with the issues raised by the people of Barbados from the various communities that they are, the various communities that we represent. We hear the people, Mr. Speaker, and we respond. We may not be in a position to do it immediately because you have to have the various resources and such like to be able to deal with a number of these matters. And a lot has been done already in the past 7 years by this administration and the administration before that, I mean the administration between 2018 and 2022. Not the other one before. But we have responded to the challenges, the number of challenges that we have encountered over the past 7 years. Mr. Speaker, from water, whether bound or lack of it, we are working to bring solutions to the people. And if there's one who can talk about water and water problems and situations in this House, Mr. Speaker, it is the honorable member for St. Lucie, because I have had my fair share of dealing with the challenges and the cries and calls from the residents. But I am not just about hearing their cries. I am about going to the government and urging the government and working with the administration to fix the issues. A quote, it was stated by the honorable member for St. Thomas about how a former prime minister, the late when Arthur operated, and if there's one thing that I will remember about him and what he used to say all the time. I was never in his cabinet. I was not even an MP. But I know in my following his various speeches and so on, he would always use this phrase, face it and fix it. And this administration has taken on that position frontally, facing the issues, not just glibly talking about them, even to score political points and such like, but making a habit of working to fix these issues that the people of this country face because they have elected us to do so. And we must be in a position to be able to report to them whenever we go back to them, to report to them of all those matters which we have been able to address and which we have put processes in place even to continue addressing, Mr. Speaker. Now, I heard and there's a lot being spoken about roads, etc. today. The agencies that we have in this country, I would say, they need even more than they do to work together. I know, and I've said, people have complained and are complaining about roads and such like. But equally, they're also complaining about groundwater. But I've had reports and conversations ever since the massive mains replacement that is being undertaken in St. Lucie. And I can say they have now set up stations in Maycosters to work on from Checker Hall to Broomfield to Greenwiches, all those areas, Connelltown, all those areas, Mr. Speaker, Colleton, to be able to replace those mains. And there's a lot of work happening. There's a lot of work happening in the constituency. But before you can pave a road, it is important because we have had a number of roads paved. I also want to express my thanks and my gratitude for the 2 additions that we've had at Chance Hall and that Gemmett's Road. I want to thank the Honourable Minister and the Parliamentary Secretary for including those districts, those communities in St. Lucie or in the program with the Scotland District Rehabilitation. We have benefited, and it is a lot more than we got under a former DLP administration after 24 years, Mr. Speaker. Truth must be told, and my mother, or my late mother, always taught me to be grateful and express gratitude. And on the behalf of the people of St. Lucie, we're not finished yet, but I want to be grateful and express the thanks for what has been done so far. I also want to take this opportunity very quickly before we get back to the substantive matter before the House today, to thank the Ministry of Transport and Works as well for the effort, even though it has taken some time, for the effort that they are making, and I assure the people of Pike Corner and Well Road and Cove and Little Bay that we are working. You have asked me questions, and we are working to complete the bridge, a proper bridge, and do proper road work so that people in those areas can properly access their homes. It's always people for persons to speak about those who live on the front road, so to speak. But there are those who live across through the gaps that we are fixing that road to be able to facilitate their travel in and out of their homes. And I want to say to them that as far as I am aware, the tender for the work, to complete the work, will soon come back in, and I've had discussion with the Honourable Minister, keeping me informed, Mr. Speaker, so I can share with them, not just from this chamber, but Mr. Speaker, when I interact with them on my way to and from church on a Sunday morning, I have to pass that community. I have to pass those communities. And I want to express my gratitude for the work. The task left was a great one, Mr. Speaker, but little by little we are dealing with it, and we are going to bring things get things done the way they ought to be done for the benefit of the people of those communities. But let me get back to the resolution, Mr. Speaker. This government has always placed people first. And sometimes you may not get what you want when you want it. But rest assured that as long as I am your MP, this is speaking directly now to the people of St. Lucie, as long as I'm your MP, I will continue to agitate and continue to humbug people. I believe when the Honourable Minister of Transport and Works look at her phone, she sometimes might be saying, wait, he again? You know? But, and she would tell you, I've had some very direct conversation with her in relation to my messaging and stating clearly, not beating around the bush, stating clearly what is happening or what the people are annoyed and upset at. I also said to the residents of Crab Hill, I know it has been a long time that you're waiting. You're waiting, the ZR men, the minibus men, the busmen, the pedestrians, and I know that you are complaining bitterly about the state of the road in Crab Hill. But I assure you that work on that area will begin very, very soon. And they tell me where soon is not on a date. I can give you a date too, because I have conversation with the minister, and she's assured me what we are doing. We are just going through certain processes now to be able to start the work, because we don't want to do, people sometimes have grown to expect fast work, and they kind of appreciate improper work, but we don't want to do, we want to do, and we will be doing a proper road. Also looking to take things like drainage into consideration and so on, because drainage must be part of any improvement anywhere across this country that you are doing. If you do not put drainage in place, then you're open up to all sorts of problems, and also to the work that you are that you want to do go into waste, because if the drainage is not complete, then completed properly, then the work that you are doing will eventually come to naught, because the water will take it up and carry it God knows where. So I want to assure those people in Crab Hill and Cold Scale and Content, in Harrison's, all those persons, the WhatsApp messages I get, I assure you that I continue to work with the ministry and bring not just a solution, but a proper solution to your challenges that you have had. Mr. Speaker, this resolution was brought by the Honourable Member for St. George South, who is Minister of Housing. I just want to send him or to ask him, and I know that he's a friend of mine, and I know that he listens. I want you, Honourable Minister, to remember the people at River Bay. I want the vesting of that land at River Bay to be done in the NHC, so that, because that was the process which I began in my short stint in the ministry, so that Mr. Goodrich, I beg your pardon, Mr. Speaker, the gentleman that is 80-something years old now will have the honor of being able to get his titles and leave something for his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. There are just 15 houses in that community, Mr. Speaker, who will benefit when that vesting is done and they are able to purchase the land and to get their titles through the NHC. And that's just what I'm asking the Honourable Minister of Housing. And he has done work, because we have had people are moving into the houses at Coconut Hall. So work is being done. Work is being done, and I'm grateful as I support this resolution today to these, my colleagues and ministers who are working. I also want to commend the Honourable Minister of Home Affairs and the Honourable Minister of Elder Affairs and People Empowerment. Home Affairs, the Force Office at Bentham's. I visited there with the minister a week ago, and we will soon be reopening that post office once the work is completed. They will also be opening the new welfare office. So things are happening. I say that this government hears and this government acts. And I want to thank my colleagues on the behalf of the people, my constituents in St. Lucie, for the work that you are doing. And, Mr. Speaker, I therefore take this opportunity to unequivocally support this resolution before this Parliament today. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. Lucie, for St. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Firstly, I want to add my voice in support of this resolution to acquire this land. It gives us, in the Ministry of Transport and Works, the opportunity to continue our work in not only building out the country's road infrastructure, but also in ensuring that those roads that already exist could be made safer for both the driving public and pedestrians as well. I listened with great interest to the debate this morning as persons spoke to certain issues as it relates to roundabouts and street lights and so on and so forth. And I felt that I would wish to give my own personal experience with a similar situation that would have occurred just in the same way that it occurs here in Windsor and in Brighton. We would have had a similar occurrence many years ago in the Greenwich Village, Lancaster area, where there was a road that we referred to all our years growing up. We referred to this place as 4 roads. It was an intersection, there were 4 roads, and with that you often have the difficulty of persons coming there and not knowing who has the right of way. And inevitably there were a number of accidents on that road. Unfortunately, I believe there was a fatality or 2 on that particular stretch of road. And this was many years ago, but government at the time in its wisdom saw the need for a roundabout to be placed right there on that road, which subsequently became the Ronald Map roundabout. And from that moment to now, and this is well over a decade, I believe there have not been any major accidents at that roundabout. So that is perhaps one of the clearest bits of evidence that I can identify personally that shows that these roundabouts, they save lives, they work in terms of managing traffic. I don't want to debate which is better between the street lights and a roundabout. But what I can tell you is on that stretch of road, if you just look from the constituency of St. Thomas there, by the parish church, there's a roundabout there, a very large roundabout, but it works. Then there's the roundabout here at the bottom of Lancaster. And just beyond that, there's some street lights. And my experience with those street lights is that they would have really changed the flow of traffic in that area over the years. What I can tell you is that, and I was just discussing it early this morning with my neighbor in St. James North, that area also was the scene of a number of accidents over the years, and it was extremely difficult for persons to exit from St. Silas or to exit from Westmoreland, or even persons on Highway 2A. It became a hazard for those persons, and government, in their wisdom, I believe the member spoke to this morning, they saw it. One of the first things that they did when we came to office was to place street lights there. Of course, if it were up to me, and it wasn't, and I guess if there was the availability of land, and I think there wasn't at the time too, I think a roundabout would have been better suited for that area, because that area, that straight flow of traffic was interrupted, in my mind, by the lights. But at the same time, we have never had a case of an accident there since those lights were installed. In fact, that road is far safer. A serious accident where life was lost, that road is far safer than it was ever in the past. And if I were to make a case, I would want to see a roundabout there as well at some point. But I know right now the lights work as they should, and as long as the timer is working as it should, those traffic tends to flow there at a good rate. Now, roundabouts, as I said, is just part of what we do. We are in ministry. We are focused right now, and I use that term intentionally because we're focused on a number of focus roads right across Barbados, certainly in the St. Michael area, and that would have been a continuation of a project that would have started a few years ago with the Mill and Pave, where we saw the fixing, repairing, rehabilitation of a number of roads right across the country, from the north right up to the south, all in the center of Barbados. We saw a number of roads being repaired. It was astonishing. I think I spoke to Rick in here, where we would have done so many roads across Barbados that the idea of leaving home on Sundays just to go out across Barbados and look for new roads and drive on them became a thing. People would leave home with their families and they would go and drive on roads all in St. George, those long stretch of roads in St. George, beautiful roads. They would go just to experience how it feels to drive on a long stretch of smooth road. And that was something that I've heard persons talk about it personally, so it's not something that I heard through secondhand, but people who told me that they would do that because they enjoyed it, and they enjoyed going and seeing the nice black roads. These are things that were fascinating some Bajans. So I know that that road project impacted people in more ways than one. Those who would have to use those roads to get to and from work and get home in the afternoons, they were happy because obviously smoother roads are safer. Potholes, yes, some people might want to give you the impression that they're safer, but in fact, when you're driving on a road and you hit into a pothole, you could very well lose control of your vehicle. So I would never make a case that potholes make driving safe anywhere. But as I said, this is just part of what we do. And within the Scotland district, because I spoke to the focus roads and the mill and pave roads, we also have a combination, because I want to think that the constituency of St. Thomas is part of the Scotland district, but they would benefit from both the Scotland district rehabilitation program, and they would also benefit from the CAF road program, where we would have done a number of roads in St. James, St. Michael, if you look at Prayer Park, St. Michael, Rockdundo, and St. Thomas. We're doing Highway 2, and we're doing Highway D. For those, that is Bridgefield and along Content, that stretch of road, Content, Short Hill. These are a number of roads that we've been working on for the over time, and these are roads that are very important to persons living in both, practically St. Joseph, St. Andrew, St. Lucy. These roads are main arteries into the Scotland district, main arteries, and we have took it to trouble to ensure that not only that these roads are being done, but that persons are made aware that work is being done in these roads. Recently, we had a situation where we had to expand a road that is a link road between these two highways, because interestingly enough, there's a link road between these two highways known as Hangman Hill. The member would have spoken about that on numerous occasions in here, because it was a horrible piece of road. I wouldn't even consider that a road, closer to a cat road, but we felt it important when we were starting these works to ensure that road become a road that could be used, and that road was expanded, it was repaired, and now that road is being looked at as a possible bus route to ensure that persons, when work start along Highway D, that the bus would have an alternative route on which to travel in order that people would be able to get to and from work. Because the reality is that in doing some of these roads, because of the nature of the roads, we have to dig deep and remove the entire road bed, go down sometimes 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet. Maybe if you find a mud hole, you may have to go as far down as 6 feet. You have to dig out these roads and rebuild these roads takes a long time, very long time, and in many cases, because of how the country areas are set up, there's no alternative routes. There's no bypass, there's no facilities for bypass, and if you have a bypass road, sometimes that takes you out maybe a mile or two. That is just the reality within the Scotland district and some parts of St. Joseph, in St. Thomas and St. Lucie, you may find that as well. But we often try to ensure, I know that the member alluded to it, that persons are aware of what we are doing in the ministry. We use every platform in terms of technology. Of course, they've been, in the past, you would have seen things in the paper. You hear it on the news, you hear it on Brass Stats, you hear it on VOB, you hear it on CBC. But we've also used IG, Facebook. We have a page that they often with information as it relates to roadworks. I know that everyone would not have access to this technology, but it is perhaps the best medium that one can use to ensure that as many people as possible become aware of the works that are going on right across the country. And even the works that are done by the various depots, like the patching and the cleaning of drainage, we also post that information on our websites, on our platforms, to ensure that as many persons as possible can not only see what is going on in the ministry, but can also comment. Because we get a number of comments. Sometimes we learn about new roads that require attention through the comments from residents who take those roads. So yes, we listen to the MPs, we listen to persons at the parish speaks, but we also monitor the comments of persons on the various social media platforms to ensure that we know and we can feel the pulse of the people, and we know where those roads that are problematic are. So these are just some of the things that we try to do to ensure that we are in constant communication with people. Of course, there's always room for improvement. There are always ways of reaching persons. We have had on occasions to go physically into the communities, more on one occasion, physically into the communities and knock on doors and speak to people. We have done that. Of course, that requires a certain amount of manpower, and it's not always the most practical thing to do over and over and over. Like, we can do it once and twice. We can do it at the beginning. We can do it in the middle. We can do it near the end. But the online platform allows us to do it on a daily basis or a weekly basis, even or sometimes a monthly basis, depending on what we are reporting, to reach as many persons as possible. So even if we're not reaching everyone as I speak, just know that we are making efforts to improve on our communication, because communication is perhaps one of those elements of road management when it comes to road construction that is extremely important, and it's important that we know what the people are thinking and they know what we are doing in the ministry. And the fact that we're doing so much, it makes the communication even more critical. So it's not something that we're going to take lightly going forward, because we're working towards having a greater presence as it relates to social media and having a closer relationship as it relates to the general public. Now, as it relates to roundabouts, as I said, within the ministry, it's just part of what we have done. The member for St. Michael's Southeast would have spoken to the various programs that we are all we are handling right now. There are a number of things that the ministry is working on right now, signage being one. We've looked also at the pedestrian crossing. We look at sidewalk program. We have a number of things that we are doing right across Barbados just to ensure that the safety of persons using our roads. Within the ministry, I've taken up the responsibility of chairing a roundabout committee. Now, this committee would have been in existence for a while within the ministry, but like so many committees right across ministries across government, some of these committees would have gone dormant, and when we saw the need for it, we have had to revitalize, resuscitate even some of these committees and set them to a new purpose, because we realized that roundabouts are not just traffic calming measures, not just road management measures, but they have other uses that sometimes even as pedestrians, we take for granted, or we even ignore, or we don't notice the potential of roundabouts. But they hold tremendous potential, especially for corporate Barbados. And that's what I'm going to speak to, because I believe it was back in the 1980s that corporate Barbados would approach MTW with a view of sponsoring roundabouts across the island. Back then there were about 49. We have about 50, 52 or so that are now being sponsored by various entities right across the country, including some maybe nonprofit organizations, some companies and so on. But right across the board, we have persons who have come forward to sponsor a number of roundabouts. And we have, over time, carved out what can only be referred to as a win-win relationship with these entities, where they are charged with maintaining roundabouts. Very few roundabouts you see across this island that are not well manicured, not well maintained, not well beautified. You don't see it because of the relationship that we've had with corporate Barbados over the years to ensure that these things are done. And what this has done over the years is that it has ensured that, yes, our roundabouts are well kept, but also those entities have had a piece of real estate right in the line of sight of most Barbadians, whether they're traveling by car or by foot, where they can advertise their products. In fact, there's some entities in this country that have done so well in advertising their products on roundabouts that you may believe that the roundabout is named after that particular entity or company. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if someone were to believe that the roundabout over there where Sir Garfield Sober's statue was before it was relocated to Kensington, I wouldn't be surprised. I would forgive someone if they thought that was called the Sagicor roundabout. In fact, most people may refer to it as Sagicor roundabout because of how Sagicor would have maintained it over the years, ensure that their branding is on that roundabout and so on, and the name of the company and what they do. But in actual fact, that roundabout is Gary Sober's roundabout. But over the years, these entities have taken ownership in the sense, not they don't own them, but the way that they have treated to them, you would think that they do, and you'll be forgiven. But that is what we would have benefited from, and you don't see them overgrown with bush. You see them well kept, nice plants, nice signage. Sometimes during the year they're well lit, and I'm going to get into that a bit more. But I just making the point that we as a people would have benefited from that relationship with corporate Barbados. When we come down from the airport and we come off that highway, and what we entering into, you know, we see a wonderful roundabout right there. It's beautiful, and we all impressed by the beauty of that particular roundabout, if I use that particular one as an example, because I myself, when I come in from Barbados, when I get there, somehow when I get to that part of the roundabout, I feel good because I know I'm closer to home, but I'm also impressed and fascinated by the beauty of that particular roundabout where by Sir Garfield Sobers. But there's more to it. We, in the committee, we saw that roundabouts can not only used to promote the branding for the individual entities, but also can be used to promote our national festivals. So for example, from time to time, you will see some roundabouts that are decorated with elements that will represent crop over. Sometimes you see Christmas, sometimes you see Easter. But these are all national festivals, or sometimes are cultural festivals too, that could be represented by roundabouts, and we encourage them to do this. In fact, one of the recommendations that the committee has come up with recently is that we are going to relook the agreement between the ministry and corporate Barbados with the view of ensuring that there are certain things that must be done. You have to do these things. You have to keep your roundabouts well maintained. Yes, that was always there, but it have to be well lit. You have to acknowledge those national ceremonies, those national festivals, and decorate accordingly. This is the expectation. If you're going to sponsor one of our roundabouts, that's what we expect from you. And you have to follow a certain guideline, because we have to set criteria. We're not going to let you do as you like. We're going to set the criteria, but you have to ensure that we can see things that reflect our national identity on our roundabouts. Right now, if you go around certain roundabouts, you see aspects of the National Cultural Foundation, their signage, their branding. You see that. And those are requirements, because we understand, just like they understand the importance of that piece of real estate in terms of promoting their businesses. We also understand the importance of that visibility in terms of promoting our culture. So those are things those are requirements. It's mandatory going forward when we finish build out the committee and what we intend from our sponsors, because we're still reaching out to them and calling them in to discuss it. And those who are listening would want to contact the ministry to ensure that you are brought up to date with the plans going forward with the various roundabouts that you may be sponsoring. Having said that, one may identify a roundabout or two here and there that might have looked unkept for a bit. And there are a number of reasons why this might have happened. And in our investigations, we have seen that one or two roundabouts would have been sponsored by companies. Those companies, over the years, might have been sold to other entities or closed down, and communication back to the ministry was not made, stating that the company is no longer interested or in a position to sponsor the roundabout, and some of those roundabouts might have remained in the state until obviously various other ministries that have the responsibility also for roundabouts or for beautifying Barbados would have gone in and cleaned them. But we've had very few cases of that happening, but we know that it has happened in the past where businesses have shifted, have changed ownership, but the new entity or new owners were not aware that part of the business was that they also sponsored a roundabout. So you got that. I mean, in reaching out, we would have corrected that, and that is a very small problem. But just in case you would have seen one that wasn't well kept, that is perhaps one of the reasons why that might have been. What we have realized also too is that these roundabouts have over the years provided, and these things that we don't notice enough, we provided a platform for our creatives, because those nice signage that you see on there, those madasalis that you see painted on those roundabouts, it didn't just happen. Somebody had to create those things. Somebody had to conceptualize those things, and then somebody had to physically paint or print those things. It didn't just happen. Nothing happens by happenstance. That was the creative energies of some of our young, bright creatives, and that is what I see as an opportunity for persons to express themselves and make some money. And make some money. Because you're not going to expect persons to do it for free, but they express themselves, they show their creativity, and they also make a living in it too as well, make some money as well as those persons who are charged with cleaning and maintaining the roundabouts. The companies will sponsor them, but they're not going to clean them themselves. They're going to pay a landscaping firm, they're going to pay an individual, a young entrepreneur, to go out there and cut the grass and to garden and to maintain the gardens on the roundabouts, because some of them have some beautiful gardens on them. So these are things that people make money from every month, sometimes every week. You don't hear any talk about it, but it happens. And I think I would also say is a predecessor to the number of things that we have now had to roll out within our ministry, because I don't have to tell you, I guess the same might apply to some of the other work ministries, but when I came into the NTW, November 27th this year, will be 30 years ago, when I first entered the gates at NTW as a young supervisor B. We had about 1,500 workers, about 1,500. Now we have something looking like 430, something like that. Now, so we have to come up with creative ways of maintaining our streets and ensuring that the country is as beautiful as possible, remains as beautiful as possible. And that's why I think this here is perhaps the predecessor to Adopt a Kilometer, which works on a similar concept, where entity sponsors a certain section of the highway, those long stretches of highway, ABC Highway, a good example, Highway 2A, another good example, and they put up their branding, the advertisements on that roundabout, and they pay people, sometimes from within the communities that the highways run through. They pay people to cut that grass, and we don't have to do it. We don't have to go into depots and look for persons or buy weed whackers to maintain and buy gas and buy string and all such like to give our workers to go out there and cut the grass every week or every month. They're doing those. They're doing that for us. And we drive and we see how beautiful those earthen drains and so on are next to the road. And we admire them, but the reality is that it's because of that partnership with corporate barbers that those things are the way they are. We could have done it too, but it would be far more difficult for us to manage such a long stretch of road every day, every week, every month, every year. So that is another benefit. So the Adopt a Kilometer program is one predecessor, one benefit that would have come down from this relationship that started with the roundabouts. And then we have the beautification program, which is similar, where we engage, and instead of the corporate barbers coming to engage us, we're engaging now the entrepreneur. We engage them through a contractual arrangement to select a certain area, and you keep that area clean too. So now, but this is more dealing with the bush, and you see, especially in the rural spaces, in the rural areas, where they're going and they're clean, as opposed to us having our workers do all of that work, where we know that we don't have the manpower, we don't have the requisite equipment and so on and so forth to do it. We've engaged and have formed these partnerships with various entities within various constituencies, and have persons now going out and doing that work. So it's all about how we evolve really doing that. When you think about it, this is really another evolution of the ministry and how we're going to have to do things going forward, where you're going to see more and more partnerships with the private sector, with other entities where you can see the efficiency and the benefits of those partnerships. So I just wanted to put that out there because, as I said, you're going to see it more and more, and we all are going to benefit from it. Because we all benefit when we see our roads clean. We all benefit when we see our highways clean. We all benefit when we see our roads fixed. And we all benefit when we see our roundabouts looking beautiful. Of course, there are certain things that we take for granted and we sometimes never even notice until somebody points them out. And perhaps roundabouts, as I said, not being a very sexy topic or subject area, it was perhaps one of those things that people never really put a lot of notice to, or pay a lot of mind to, but in fact, it's something that is very important. As I close, I want to just give you a sense, too, because of the seriousness that we have taken in terms of what we are doing in the ministry as it relates to this particular committee, because it's not just our people, our technical staff, our engineers who are sitting down and making determinations as to what and how we approach the roundabouts in this country. Really, this is a thing, a committee that embraces the views of persons from different ministries. So the makeup is such that we have members from the Ministry of Youth, and that is primarily because over the years, through the I don't want to use the wrong terminology, but the Ministry of Youth has always been that ministry responsible for beautifying our roundabouts, especially around Independence, where we have electing ceremony and so on and so forth. lighting was always important, so we always felt that a member from that particular ministry should be part of the committee. NCF, because of the creativity and the fact that they're where the creatives we would draw from, they also have representation on this here as well, on this committee as well. Also the planning department. We're going to be erecting things. We're going to need advice from planning to ensure that we do not collide with any of the particular regulations or laws as it relates to erecting along our streets. And we have persons from the private sector because we want to engage those persons with the necessary skill sets that may not be found within any of our ministries, but will have skill sets that would be of benefit to the committee, to the ministry, and to the country as a whole. And of course, members from within NTW who have been trained over time to in road management and so on and so forth. So that is just a sense of how this committee is set up. So it's not just a committee in-house where we discuss amongst ourselves. We have brought in the best of the best, or brought in the various experts from the other ministries to assist us and guide us in how we are going to go forward with our runabout committee. So I just wanted to share that. I know the minister would have also mentioned bridges as part of our wider plan to improve the road infrastructure. We have a number of bridges here in this country. Some are old, some are, they're old. Just me leave it as like that. They're old, and we would rather fix them before they become a problem. You can see evidence of stress on them. Of course, that's not to say that they're in any danger of collapse or anything like that, but you want to address problems frontally. You want to address problems before they become real problems. So we are also looking at bridges very seriously. I mean, they bind communities together. Without bridges, communities will be divided, and perhaps it would just as it's perhaps worse. Losing a bridge is to me perhaps the worst thing that can happen to a community in terms of breaking up community cohesion. I've had to experience that in St. Andrew more times than I would like to mention. They have currently 2 bridges now that are currently out of commission, and one, thankfully, is under construction. That's the bridge that joins the communities of Baxter's and Bruceville. We have seen some action down there.
Your Honour member has 1 more minute.
1 more minute. Where we're actually seeing some work in terms of the piling. Even as we are threatened by the rainy season, we are seeing the piling taking place, and we're using technology that will allow us to work even within the rainy season and get as much done as possible. I was going to make a quick mention of the fact that we noticed that there's some bridges that have an interesting history, and we want to share that history wherever possible with Barbadians so they know what those bridges meant, what they meant to our forefathers, the mindset of the people of the time when those bridges were built, and what went into building them. So all of that will form part of our national signage program, where we look at, just in our small way, helping to educate Barbadians about the history of our country and our road infrastructure. So just to come back where I have started, I want, again, associate myself with this resolution. I want to support it, as it provides now an opportunity to make a section of Barbados, an area in Barbados which was to this point considered unsafe, make that area safe or safer. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to very briefly lend my voice to the resolution, and firstly let me say that I support. But in particular, I also want to use the occasion to thank the Ministry of Transport and Works for its commitment to ensuring that the residents and constituents of St. James North have at their disposal roads that are fit for purpose. And I want to thank the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast and her team for being able to do that, particularly also after the the recent by-election, roads have continued, particularly also, for example, in Rockdendo, a number of those tenantry roads have been done, and I think it therefore speaks to the commitment of the honourable members' team in ensuring that they can have those roads done. But of course, we're not in completion yet. There are a lot more roads certainly that need to be undertaken, and I'm pleased to report that I've submitted those roads within the constituency, particularly also in the WIM and in Ashton Hall, which need tremendous support, and we're looking to ensure that those can be built out. But equally, roads in Western and in that area are also being worked on, and I'm very pleased for that. The Honourable Member for St. Andrew would have spoken not long, and he spoke on the use of technology. And whilst I commend it, I would encourage the ministry to just go a little further, particularly in the advent of technology, not just have it on the website, for example, but with everyone having an app in one way or another on their devices that can lend to the updating of these things in real time so that people can know where the road works are, roads to avoid, and it being done in a timely manner so that people can plan their business and their lives as they get on. I also am happy about the fact that the barriers, and those of you who know the WIM and the WIM Gully, there's a very deep gully over there as you go down. There's some barriers that have been there for a number of years that had broken away. And I'm advised that those barriers are pretty much completed and are shortly to be installed, which certainly is good news to me and to the residents of the WIM. But one of the things, Mr. Speaker, I want to briefly touch on, and this has been touched on time immemorial, and I know the Honourable Minister, she's gone on record as saying it too, and this is the standard that we must have, but it continues to be a bugbear where beautiful roads are laid, we dig them up, because there are different reasons why you have to dig them up, water mains and different things. But as a country, we must come to the conclusion that it cannot be business as usual. And after paving our roads, putting great infrastructure, great investment, they're dug up and they're not resurfaced, one, in a timely manner, and two, in a way that makes us happy as a people. And I just want to encourage those in the depots and those who are planning these things to make sure that as you dig up, and we understand it has to happen for different reasons, but make sure that it's done and planned in a way that allows for ensuring that the roads can be repaved in a timely manner and in a manner that's fit for purpose. There are a number of roads in St. James North that are affected by this, and I've spoken to the team who have responsibility for these things, and they've assured me that we'll get it done. But there's a little impatience on my end, and I'm sure this is certainly reflected even more by the constituents in St. James North. And then, lastly, I just want to briefly touch not only on the quality of our roads, but the quality of our driving. In and around our schools, Mr. Speaker, the issue of ensuring safety, not just in the schools, but safety around our schools and the use of our roads by drivers and cyclists continues to be one of grave concern to me. And I want to use this occasion to encourage all those who use our roads, but particularly our drivers and those who use the motorbikes. When you're coming into the zones of our schools, you need to be mindful, you need to be extra cautious, because there are children, there are parents, there are teachers, and those who are using these schools. And I can tell you that the team from the Ministry of Educational Transformation is actually working with the team from the Ministry of Transport and Works so as to formulate a policy that ensures that we can have designated speed limits for school zones, thus ensuring that in and around our schools that our people are protected once they're using the roads. So I simply, once again, want to support the resolution, and I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable St. George South.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we wrap up this debate on the resolution to acquire these 7 parcels of land, let me thank members in the chamber, indeed, for voicing and giving their support for this very important resolution that seeks to address traffic management in this country from a safety perspective. I know it is good news to the ears of the residents of Darrell's Hill, Windsor Road, Low Graves, Boarded Hall, Windsor Tenantry, and those persons who use Highway 5 traveling to the east, and also coming from Highway 5 traveling to Central and other areas. It is really a connect that links the north of the island to the south, to the east, and to the central, and to the west. And Mr. Speaker, certainly what is evident that this government, as articulated by the member for St. Michael's Southeast and the other members of this chamber, this government is actively finding ways and strategies to improve traffic congestion in this country. And the primary motive, the primary objective, Mr. Speaker, is to make sure that Barbados roadways are indeed safe and that the users, whether pedestrian, motorcyclists, or private vehicle users, public vehicle users, are indeed safe on our roads, whether we're signalizing sections or whether we're utilizing roundabout. So, Mr. Speaker, I would end by begging the road users, as the member for St. Michael's Southeast, to recognize these important structures, whether they're signal lights or whether they're roundabouts, and to follow the protocols and the instructions as we have articulated in a handbook for road users in this country. And that handbook, I just saw my 17-year-old utilizing it to get a little permit to learn to drive. And indeed, it was a little refresher for me when I looked at the handbook and I noticed some of the road signs and what not to do on the roads. And I think we all should take a look at it, ever so often, and to help educate some of our road users, because very often persons like myself who had a license in 1987, and that's years ago, we forget indeed, well, not me, but some persons around that age group, they forget the use of the signs and, and the markings of the road, what you can do and what you can't do. So, Mr. Speaker, with those words, I want to beg that this resolution to acquire 20,254.5 square meters of land, the 7 parcels of land at the Windsor Brighton Roundabout, now pass in this low chamber. I thank you.
The question is that this resolution do now stand pass. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 3 p.m. today.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 3 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 3 p.m.